The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive, only for patrons.
So folks, tonight's video is a little different. It's something special. We got a patron of the channel that wanted to come on and discuss some Star Wars toy topics. So I'm with Kendo tonight, and our patron's name is Greg. How you doing, Greg?
I'm good. Not quite sure how this works. Do I talk first, or do you talk first?
The best
Oh boy.
Poe-Dameron line ever. So Greg, why did you want to come on tonight and talk to world-class bullshitters?
Well, I kind of found you guys through the Star Wars merchandise video. I'd kind of clipped some of your stuff before, but never really kind of put together. It was all the same channel. But I think the first thing that kind of made me subscribe was the Star Wars merchandise is dead video. And it kind of hit home because it's something I kind of realized, but most of my friends aren't into collecting and that sort of thing. So I never really had anyone to kind of talk my theories on about it, about how suddenly everything just kind of sits in the stores now and there's no real demand anymore. It's almost like an oversaturation, but there's no one I could really talk about that with, and no one's really making videos on it that I had seen. Then when I found your guys' videos, I was like, oh, yep, that's definitely it. That's definitely it.
You know, I made that video just on the fly. I was out one day doing something, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try making a YouTube video about that. And I'm glad I did, because that's the video that I feel has brought a ton of people to the channel. And I'm glad that we can be that outlet for you, because I have a couple guys that I can talk to here, but I definitely understand it's more of a niche thing to talk about, especially when you're not a kid and you're talking about toys. People kind of look at you funny, and I'm like, well, it's a collectible. It's a different thing. It's a little representation of something we like. It's not like we're going home at night and playing with Luke Skywalker. It's just, I don't know. It's a different thing at this
on
point.
Your shelf, and they look nice, and it kind of reminds you of better days.
Yeah, I mean, in my office, I got countless things on the shelves behind me, so collectibles are something that I'm never going to grow out of.
Yeah. I totally understand. And for Star Wars especially, it's unique because Star Wars kind of survived because of the toys. So when people don't really understand just how important toy sales are to Star Wars, kind of realize they haven't really been a Star Wars fan for all that long. The books and the toys were kind of what allowed Star Wars to survive the 90s.
Yeah, well, especially, okay, so the Return of the Jedi came out in 83, and they let it die relatively quickly because there was the Power of the Jedi, or not Power of the Jedi, the Power of the Force toy line, and that was it from 85 to 95. And then you had, like, the final release of the original trilogy on VHS, as well as the couple books and stuff like that. So before the special editions came out, there was some Star Wars hype, but it's really the toys that brought back, like, that feeling of Star Wars has returned. And it's funny how, you know, back then they tried to say that they made them simpler to evoke nostalgia while trying to make them look like superhero toys. And nowadays, they don't even say that they've cut down on articulation and stuff to make it more nostalgia. It's just cost cutting, and the figures look cheap and terrible at every point.
Very much so.
I mean, I haven't seen one that truly impressed me enough to buy it.
I think one of the ones for those little 5-point of articulation figures I picked up, and this is back when The Force Awakens was coming out. I went to Force Friday because I was an idiot, and I saw a Sarko Plank figure, and I was like, oh, that guy looks really cool. Can't wait to see his role in the movie. And I picked him up. When I opened it up, he's in like a toga dress thing, and his legs are molded to the skirt. So when he puts one leg forward, that entire half of the skirt moves forward. It just looked really, really dumb. And now it's sitting in a box somewhere with no daylight at all.
Is he the portions guy?
Not even. That's the thing. Went to watch the movie, went to go look for this character who I thought was so cool. Not even in the movie.
Now, as a guy who's been collecting Star Wars stuff for most of my life, and I got way too much that I'll admit to, the alien figures never really spoke to me. I've always been the kind of guy that bought, like, every Han Solo or every Luke or Princess Leia, all that stuff. And I'm one of those people, like, if the character has a good role in the movie, I'll go seek out more of their stuff. But usually I stick with the key characters. But I can understand, like, being disappointed because prior to The Force Awakens, they released some 5 points of articulation Han Solos, and they, like, took out the holster and on his leg, and I'm like, this is just lazy. Like,
why would they take the holster? That's part of his Okay.
Every Han Solo since 1999 had the usable holster. Because the first one, I mean, if we don't count the kind of holster on the vintage Hoth Han Solo, but that Comtech 1999 Han Solo had a holster, and they just kept it. It was like a common feature. And
Yeah.
it was funny. I had a discussion, or not a discussion, but I was reading one of the comments on today's video, and somebody's like, Star Wars toys have never been good. They've never had this and that. I'm like, did you not see a Star Wars toy from about '04 to 2012? They were really, really good.
They were. In fact, I still have when Attack of the Clones first came out. That was actually when I got my first Star Wars figure that I can remember. I know from pictures I had a Kenner Darth Vader with the clip-on plastic cape, but I have no memory of it. You know how you can see things in pictures like, oh yeah, I remember having that, but you don't actually remember memories around it.
Oh, yeah.
So the first figure I remember having memories around is a clone trooper, and I still have the figure, and he was kind of pre-posed where his knees could move, but he was obviously set up to go into a certain pose, a certain action pose. But I remember that being my favorite Star Wars figure, and I would imagine all these adventures. And of course, when I saw Attack of the Clones, it's like, oh, that's pretty cool, and just kind of forgot about it. But the toy was still one of my favorite toys. And I think that's kind of how Star Wars kind of survived in my head, because I hadn't seen the original trilogy. I saw 1, I saw 2, and they were just okay. And the toys kind of made it survive. And then I saw 4, 5, and I freaked out because at the end of 5, I thought Han Solo legitimately died. Because I didn't know there was a sixth one. I'm a young kid. I was born in 1999. So when I saw these movies, I was probably in like junior high, and I didn't know there was a sixth one. And that's when I became a Star Wars fan, even though I never did finish episode 5 until many years later, probably like when I was in high school. I finished it because whenever he went into the carbon freezing chamber, I would get scared and turn it off because I was a wimp.
My cousin, the first time I saw The Empire Strikes Back, covered my face when the Wampa hit Luke. I didn't want it to be covered up, but she's like, oh, don't look at this, and covered my face. I'm like, whatever. But yeah, 1999, I vividly remember that year. You're making me feel old.
So...
No, that's interesting though to talk to somebody, because we always hypothesize on the channel, like, what's it like to talk to somebody that grew up with the prequels? How would they feel about the originals? Because everybody that you listen to on the show, Dion's the youngest at 28, I'm 29, and then Nick and Kendo, they're in their 30s. So we all grew up with the original Star Wars to a point where it's like, yeah, I remember vividly watching all the movies and not even thinking about prequel characters and stuff. For me, even in the beginning, I just thought there was one movie. So you talk about not knowing there's a part 6. I thought everything just wrapped up in the first movie, and when I would get toys that weren't in that movie, I just thought it was just like, hey, Luke with a muscle shirt, or Han with a black jacket on. I didn't even put that together at the time.
For me, I saw episode 1. My dad took me to see it close to opening day. It was probably like a couple days later, and I enjoyed it. I was probably like 10 at the time. I enjoyed it, and then it was over, and I was like, okay, cool. Went about my life. It didn't change me or anything like that. It didn't really affect me. Lego was coming out at about the same time, so I got some of the Lego sets because Lego was like this new thing to me. And then I saw episode 2. It was 2002, and again, it was more of the same. It was like, oh, these are okay. It's cool to have this little escape, but it didn't really draw me in. And then I saw 4 and 5, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And they were so different in tone and in like shot style, and the fact that it seemed more like a documentary, kind of how people would talk about the lived-in universe, where it's all new and fresh to us, but to them it's everyday stuff. You see the Millennium Falcon, and to them it's a piece of junk, but to you it's a technological marvel. And I didn't realize that episodes 1 and 2 were in the same universe as 4, 5, and 6. They were so different to me that I thought they were 2 different movie franchises, and then one was like a knockoff or a parody or some sort of nod to these movies, and I enjoyed them much more. And then when somebody explained it to me, like, no, this is what came before, it didn't click for me right away. I was like, that can't be right. These are 2 different.
Believe me, I feel that they're 2 different sagas at the same time, because the sensibilities from the original ones have gone out the window. That's why I get mad at episodes 7 and 8 so much, because the sensibilities that Disney claimed to bring back weren't there. All they were doing is hyping, oh, we got real life sets and practical effects when we can use them. It's like, that's nice and all. The movie's still 90% CGI, which is fine because it has to be with what Star Wars is nowadays. But the stories just aren't coherent, and when they are coherent, they're just poorly conceived. And then it's like you're getting hit with a double whammy because you go from a crappy movie and now your merchandise is beyond crappy to a point where it's clearanced at $1, 5 and 6 weeks after it's hit theaters?
It's actually kind of funny. When the toys came out before episode 8, I already knew that Rose Tico was going to be my least favorite character. When I saw the figure, she looked kind of dopey, and I described it to my friend as someone who was cosplaying as a background character at a low-budget convention. Because she just had that kind of look.
Well, there's a guy on YouTube that made a video, I think it's called like Bolshevik Marketing or something, and it was interesting because he's like, they're trying to make girls play with boys' toys and make boys' toys more accessible, or girls' toys more accessible to boys. And Rose Tico feels like that because what? Okay, we were little boys. Why would you ever want like an Asian woman in a yellow flight suit? Like, where is the coolness to that? She doesn't come with a gun.
There's no she's got a cool gun, but no one's gonna go up and buy this at the time $10 figure just for that little piece of plastic.
Yeah, the word Star Wars aren't enough.
The what?
The words Star Wars on it aren't enough.
Yeah, it's not enough. You look at that, and I think the unfortunate thing is that's going to become the new Star Wars. So people are going to see that and be like, "Oh, Star Wars." Random people trying to look like they belong in space when really they probably belong not here.
My best guess is that Lucasfilm will course correct after Episode 9, and I'd like to think that Kathleen Kennedy will be let go, because there are other people more capable of doing what she's doing.
Definitely.
She's not even doing a good job. And then in terms of toys, I know people love to make the excuse, well, kids aren't buying toys and this and that and the other. Well, here's the thing. Lego sells like crazy. Adults and kids buy Lego. A lot of adults buy Star Wars toys. When your stuff's overpriced and your characters aren't memorable or cool, that's the problem. Like with Darth Maul. I bought into Darth Maul just from a trailer. And
right.
Yeah, he died off in that movie, and in hindsight, he didn't do too much, but what he did do was awesome. That lightsaber duel is one of the best in the whole series.
He also revolutionized the lightsaber and what it could be. From, it's just this one sword to this dude pulled out a sword and it had a blade on one side. We're like, okay, we've seen that before. And then the other side came out and you're just like, what? You can do that?
That whole scene was just perfectly paced, and it was really exciting. I remember seeing that part, and I was like, oh, okay, this is where the movie's going to pick up. And then, sadly, it intercuts with Anakin and Jar Jar in the field, and then...
the real Sith Lord.
Yeah, and all that crap. It was... I don't know. There are so many missed opportunities with the prequels. Overall, I think it ends strongly. You should go back. I know you're a patron, obviously, but have you listened to our commentaries on them yet?
I did. I listened to them on the way home. I listened to episode 7, and I think I've listened to part of one of the prequels, but I don't remember which one. I've got a long drive home, so I'll often throw on podcasts or something as I'm driving home, and that's actually how I listen to you guys most of the time as I'm driving home.
Oh, cool. See, now that's something I always do like to hear, because I just make the videos and the stuff from my office, and then that's it. I never think how people consume. I just see the numbers and read the comments. So it's interesting to see or hear how somebody consumes world-class bullshitters. So, what is it, is it to work or to school or what?
It's actually, curiously, it's to both. It's to work, but also from work. I've got, I wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. to get to work. It takes me about an hour, and then going home, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So ample time to listen to a lot of your guys' stuff.
Well, thanks for listening. I appreciate it, but I don't want to change the topic too much because you want to talk about Star Wars toys. So, what is the most recent Star Wars collectible you've purchased? Oh,
that's a good question. The Death Star Trooper for the 6-inch figures.
Oh, on the vintage card?
Yeah. I picked them up. I've got a little display, Darth Vader, and then some Stormtroopers and some one of the Death Troopers, 3 of the Tank Troopers. What else was back there? An AT. Pretty much most of the Empire's troopers. I picked up, when The Force Awakens came out, I picked up Captain Phasma and Finn in disguise, and not disguise, but in the Stormtrooper outfit. And I picked up one of the First Order Stormtroopers, and I almost cried because the elbow went from like a straight bend to like a 15-degree bend. I don't know what's up with that.
Being taken out of the box?
Huh?
From being taken out of the box?
Oh no, I mean that's the joint. Like,
oh, okay.
Like it was. I can't. It's hard to describe. You'd have to actually see the disappointment, but you can't get the gun to be held in two hands very well. And and then on top of that, you can't really get him doing anything else special. It's like, okay, you can't hold his gun in two hands, but can he look like he's shooting dynamically? Not really. What can Captain Phasma do? Well, not much. She's got this really thick plastic cape on her back that they just slapped on there for no reason. And that's that. For Christmas, I got Luke Skywalker on Octu, and I already knew the movie was crap by that time. I had watched the movie, and I didn't pay for my ticket, so luckily I didn't have to pay, but I still felt ripped off when I saw it. But I still wanted that Luke Skywalker outfit because I could at least have the imagination of like, oh, this is what he's actually doing. But the cape that he has with the hood and everything, there's no connection. There's like a little string there, and you're supposed to put it around his neck and tie it around his neck. Who's gonna do that?
Not a kid, because a kid's gonna lose that right away.
I lost it, and I'm an adult. I have the box. I've got the figure. I've got the stand. The cape is gone, and he didn't come with anything else. There's no lightsaber. There's no stand. There's no staff. There's nothing. It's just this figure, this piece of cloth, and this stand. So I bought a Rey from Episode 8, took the lightsaber from her, gave it to Luke, and put him next to Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Old Ben Kenobi, this one. And then I put Rey, this is kind of weird, I put her on her knees, and then I put Jaina Solo from the Black Series, kind of like executing her. I feel that's who should have been in the movie, but...
Yeah, them going like clean house with the expanded universe was really stupid in hindsight, because I'm not saying that... Now, personally, if I could have a perfect world for Star Wars, in 99, we would have got Episode 7 because the actors still looked good enough. That way you could have adapted maybe one of the novels, like the Thrawn trilogy or something like that, and you had the technology. Exactly. It would have felt like a nice progression. But why not at least keep the characters' like integrity? They changed so much just for the sake of change. And you brought up Luke not having a lightsaber. So this is a toy you're trying to sell to kids. This is what Hasbro says. Like, they don't care about collectors. They tell us, we'll buy your shit, but you really don't want us. So you try to sell a toy to kids of an old man in a cape with a stick or nothing.
Yeah.
No lightsaber, no cool factor. So Luke is a hard sell to these children. Like, why would they get him?
It's disappointing. In my area, there are 2 Targets. There are 3 Targets. 2 Walmarts, 2 Toys R Us's, and 2 JCPenney's. And the reason I mentioned the JCPenney's is because I've been hunting for Darth Revan for a long time in the 6-inch series, and apparently he shows up at JCPenney's every so often. But every time I go to those stores and I go inside, it's the same figures. And when I go to the Target, a whole bunch of those Luke Skywalkers are just like up on the wall. And the little box and everything, like, limited time, get the Luke Skywalker with the stand and the cape, and that's about it. But get it, man. And it's like, no one's picking them up. It's the same ones there, like, week after week. And I go to these places probably like 2-3 times a week just to check the stock. And every time I go away disappointed, and I say to myself, stop doing this. You know there's not going to be anything good there. And then a couple days later, I'm like, but what if? And I go there and nope, nothing good.
Well, a couple years, not even a couple years, maybe a year and a half ago or so, when they had the Jedi Knight Luke, you couldn't find that in stores. You couldn't find Luke in a Stormtrooper costume. So if anyone wants to say, well, people just don't buy Luke Skywalker toys, it's not true. They just don't buy this Luke Skywalker because
he's not really a... They say they don't pander to collectors, but yet this is probably the most collector-y of the series, because it's a figure with absolutely nothing. It's like a full nostalgia, like, gamble. Like, oh, you remember Luke Skywalker? You want to get that one? Because we had the extra plastic.
Well, I mean, you collect the vintage card ones. That Luke, I've never even seen Luke on that card back in the stores. I've seen Princess Leia and Obi-Wan, and I didn't even buy those.
I have of that one I had to order, and that's part of the thing that lets you know that the original trilogy is still marketable to this day because I can't find any of the legacy stuff except for that stupid $40 Darth Vader pack with the cardboard backing.
Oh yeah, I never bought that. I just bought the re-release with the figure for 20.
That's the one I bought too, but I had to buy it online. Like most of the figures now, I just have to go on like Big Bad Toy Store or Amazon, find it, and get it shipped to me because in the stores those sell quick because they're characters that people actually care about.
Yeah,
But
I actually go to both of those websites.
you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to go back in there and find a Constable Zuvio or find a Ray from 2 years ago. Oh my god.
Well, dude, in preparation for our discussion tonight, I went out and filmed some B-roll footage just
Oh
so
yeah?
the listeners can have something to look at while we talk over it. So I went to one of my Toys R Us's, and lo and behold, tons of Constable Zuvios. And have you seen that giant, well, not giant, but it's like the Power Wheels land speeder for little kids to ride around in?
I've only seen a couple of those, but that's because with the whole they're only at Toys R Us as far as I'm aware. I don't know if they're at Target, but I saw a couple at Toys R Us, and then they weren't there. And when I talked to the associate, they had just put them in the back because Toys R Us is going through that weird bankruptcy thing.
Yeah, mine's closing.
Oh, that sucks.
I know.
Well, actually, I don't know if that sucks because they're kind of overpriced.
No, well, for me it sucks because I'm 29. I distinctly remember going to that store the first day it opened because my mom and I were looking for Power Rangers toys.
Right?
Because you talk about demand, you couldn't find Mighty Morphin Power Rangers toys in 1993 because the show came out in like September, and they were gone. Like I went to the store the first day. What did they have? All the bad guys. Nobody wanted the bad guys. They all wanted the Power Rangers. Luckily, well, I just went to Santa Claus that year and said, Santa, I want every Power Ranger. He's like, oh, you'll get them all. Luckily, my mom ordered them from Japan from Toys R Us, and they
That's
got
a pretty
them.
awesome phone.
And I mean, I've continually gone to that Toys R Us. I bought game consoles and all kinds of stuff there. So it's sad to see it go. But you talk about that land speeder, dude. It's already clearance or already $100 off.
I still wouldn't buy it. What am I gonna? If I had a kid, I probably still wouldn't buy it. Honestly,
Yeah,
I can't imagine a use for it. Where are you gonna put it? And I feel like it'd be really cumbersome to drive it around for 10 minutes and then it dies.
I mean, I could see being a little kid and being excited, but I feel like if it was viable in the 70s, something like that would have been cooler for those kids because Luke Skywalker was a cool hero. I think a 5-year-old and under that's going to fit into that vehicle, there's so many other things that their attentions can be, or that can grab their attention, and then Star Wars might seem dated to a kid that age. Maybe a few years older, then they'll start to see the appeal of the original stuff. So it's just all the marketing decisions they make just feel stupid.
It is kind of stupid. And I think they are doing it on purpose because if they make the, quote, older stuff look dumb, they can hype up the newer stuff, right? Like, oh, no one bought the land speeder, so I guess that means the, episode 4 stuff just isn't that great. We just sat in stores and died, so we're going to, churn out some more of the new stuff. Let's make a new land speeder that's got blackjack and hookers, and, that'll be better. I kind of feel like that's the direction they're trying to go with the oversaturation of the older stuff. Like, oh, remember this, remember this, remember this. People get sick of it, say, how come we're not doing any new stuff? And then when they put the new stuff out more and more, maybe they think people will catch on. But the new stuff just sits on shelves, and the old stuff, if it's good old stuff, gets taken up, and the old stuff, if it's bad old stuff, just kind of sits there like the land speeder.
And have you seen those metallic figures for the 40th anniversary? Those little die-cast ones.
Those are dumb. I don't understand the point.
Well, okay, you talk about intentionally bad marketing decisions. I don't know if you've heard of this website. It's called Jedi Temple Archives.
I've heard of it, but I've never been there. I think they're connected to Rebel Scum.
Yeah, they're essentially this one and the same. Realistically, if you go to one, you don't need to go to the other. But the guy that runs Jedi Temple Archives is kind of weird. I don't ever know if he's sarcastic or not, and he's real uptight. He's like a man child, put it like that. And they just always cover this stuff, and they talk about it. Actually, they started to reference one of our videos, which is cool.
Oh.
And they always try to figure out the reason why they do these things. And those metallic figures made this guy have an embolism. He went nuts. He's like, why wouldn't they just release something on the vintage card backs or this or that and the other thing? And the whole website blew up at the sight of these, or the announcement of these metallic figures. And they're, like you said, they're dumb. What purpose do they serve? They don't move. They don't even look good. If they were little metallic figures that looked like SH Figure Arts, then I could understand the appeal. But They don't
Yeah,
look like those.
they don't look good at all, and I don't know why they thought it'd be all that great. They kind of have something similar now for the Black Series, where like there's the Darth Vader stepping through the door on a stand, and you're supposed to pose your Black Series stormtroopers around him, and it looks kind of cool because it's got like blast effects if I remember correctly, and he's like stepping through and his lightsaber's ignited and stuff. It's supposed to look really cool, but I can't see myself picking that up. Then they have one for Luke Skywalker. I think he's at a AT-AT foot, I think. That's
Yeah,
like
in his Hoth gear. Not Hoth gear, his flight suit from his snowsuit.
yeah, he's in his flight suit, but I can't. I don't know. I don't. I think it's more of the same of like, oh, this is a stand, but stands are more for collectors. But it's being sold in Toys R Us, which is more,
For
kids are going to see that more. Collectors normally either go online or they go like on certain days of the week, and they know what they're going to pick up. I don't think they're going to be wandering through the aisles and be like, oh, this stand looks nice.
Yeah, I know for me personally, once I'm looking like, okay, the Black Series Boba Fett was so hard to find. And I remember going online.
I was lucky. I got that one in stores actually.
Same here. I went to the Disney store and bought it.
Really?
Yeah, I got word that the Disney store had gotten. I guess that was the second. No, was it the second or the third wave of Black Series?
I think it was the second wave.
That wave with Boba Fett, it was rumored that they were going to hit Disney store. So I just drove out to the Disney store, and there it was. So I bought 2 of them, and I've had it since it came out. But that's a figure that holds such high value that I've never seen in stores. Why wouldn't Hasbro release figures that people want easily? Like, everyone's going to buy Boba Fett.
Oh yeah, I can attest to that. I have all of the Lego Slave ones for Boba Fett, from the 1999 one all the way up to the Ultimate Collector's one from like 3 years ago, and I even have the one from the Celebration. It's like a little mini one that Boba Fett could sit in. I have them all, and then I have the vintage collection, the 3 3/4 inch one with the removable helmet. But what I did is I popped off Tamora Morrison's head. Well, I didn't really pop it off. I put it in the helmet, then I popped it off, and then I bought a Jeremiah Colton figure from episode 3 because he was played by Jeremy Bullock, and I popped that head off and put it on Boba Fett.
Oh, nice.
So it's the actual person. Because I when I went back and I watched them when I was older, I grew fond of Boba Fett because I thought he was really cool. And a lot of people think he's overrated and think Jango Fett's the better character, and then I just kind of point out who actually completed their job. And then people kind of shut up because Jango Fett's job was to assassinate Padme. He failed. Boba Fett's job was to capture Han and Leia and everyone, and he succeeded. So really, who was the better bounty hunter as far as the movies are concerned?
You're not going to get an argument from me either way about Jango Fett being better. Ugh.
Yeah.
And that's my least favorite special edition change from Empire Strikes Back. The
Same.
voice of Tamara Morrison. It doesn't fit.
No. He doesn't sound... He sounds like he's asking questions all the time. What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me. It's like, could you be a little bit more threatening, please?
Yeah, the guy Jason, I think it was Jason Wingreen or
Wingreen.
The guy that
Poor
did
guy.
the original one.
Yeah, poor guy died and had his credits erased from Star Wars, pretty much.
That's really shitty. Like, I mean, I can understand, like, some of the special edition changes I'm very cool with, especially in the original film, because I understand, like, certain effects just didn't work. I know they were on a time crunch, and it was 1976 going into 77. I'm not knocking it. I have an original cut of the first film that I do watch every once in a while. But just some of those, like, Battle of Yavin shots or some of the cleaned-up effects do look nice. And I think, yes, George Lucas went overboard, but the special editions do have their merits in some places, and it's kind of sad that they do those kind of changes with Tamara Morrison being added in or Hayden Christensen being added in. That's the dumbest one. That from that movie is the the Darth Vader screaming no is the dumbest one out of that movie. But Hayden Christensen's a close second because that ruins Darth Vader's character arc, and you see the internal struggle. He's wearing a fucking mask that never changes, but he looks, and then he just lifts him up and the music blares and he tosses him over.
Yeah.
Like, that epicness of Star Wars has been dead for quite a long time. And
it's dumbed down.
Yeah, I would say everything's laid out for you.
How are people going to know that he's conflicted? Oh, to mirror the prequels, we should have him yell no. No one thought,
George.
Wait, why though? Why would he do this? That's not at all within his character by this point to be that emotive. Even in this giant pivotal scene, he's not going to emote vocally like that.
It's frustrating. It's really hard to find a cut of Star Wars that you can thoroughly enjoy 100% all the way through.
There's the despecialized editions, which my friend that I work with, he's played them on, so it kind of takes the best of both, where it doesn't do any of like the changes to the voices and the dubbing and stuff like that. It doesn't add in the no. Well, it takes out the no. Han doesn't have to like make his head do some voodoo or anything like that. It's all pure there, but then it keeps like the visual enhancements of the lightsabers and of the lasers, stuff like that. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. If you have the opportunity, you should check them out. But I hear they're hard to come by. I'm not actually quite sure how to get them, but they do know those exist.
There's a website, it's called like originaltrilogy.com or something like that. I know that they explain how to get them. I can always get Nick to download them for me. I don't know. I mean, in a way, I feel like I'm almost tired of watching Star Wars until I put it in, and then I'm like, okay, this is still like the best movie, and I'm really excited for it. So I can tell you now that, I don't really want to watch Star Wars, but if I go somewhere and the original one's on, even Empire, Jedi, and I don't have to go somewhere, I'd probably sit down and watch the entire film and then do whatever I had to do.
I agree. I've got them in a box set, and every time I watch through them, I'm kind of like, oh man, the good old days. And in the cantina scene, you know the Hammerhead, right? The Ithorian that's in the cantina scene.
Yeah.
He's my favorite species. I can't say character because he does absolutely nothing. But he's my favorite species. So when it comes to, that's why I picked up like Sarcoplank, because aliens have kind of been my thing. Star Wars aliens have always had this unique look about them. And so I picked up the Power of the Force Ithorian figure. I picked up I think it's the Saga Legends figure that had a bit more detail, but same 5 points of articulation. And here I am waiting and waiting and waiting for a new Ithorian figure to pick up. And I know the demand isn't going to be very high for an Ithorian figure. Most people don't even know what an Ithorian necessarily is. And if they saw it on the shelf, they'd probably pass it by. But, I mean, if Rose Tico can get a toy and she's not that important to the plot aside from sidelining it, I'm pretty sure this dude who looked up from his table once probably had a bigger impact on people.
Well, you could always use Rosa's sister Paige as an example, too. I know she opened the pod bay door to let the bombs out, then she dies. The fact that figure appears in Wave 1. Come on, in General Hux, why would you put General Hux as a figure? Talk about a boring toy. I mean, yeah. if you have to take and make a wave of figures for Episode 8, well, you should put Poe Dameron in there, because at least little boys can find him kind of cool until you watch the movie and watch him be utterly emasculated by an unqualified admiral.
Yeah, my friend hated that. He was my friend's favorite character in Episode 7 when we first watched it, and he was like, I can't wait to see what they do with this guy's character. And then I saw the movie, and I was like, you're going to be disappointed.
I bet you they're going to try to make him better in Episode 9. They'll try to punch him up as like the Han Solo replacement, because where are we now? I'm not saying you can't have strong women characters in movies at all, but with Star Wars, you got to look at your audience. Kathleen Kennedy likes to quote, 51% of the audience is female. Yeah, but that 51%, what percentage is going to go watch Star Wars? Like, when I was out the other night, I saw a group of women. I went to dinner, and there were a group of women, like a big group of women. They were all going to see 50 Shades Freed. I don't think there are as many groups of grown women going out to see Star Wars like this where they make a whole night of it. Maybe there's like a group of people and like a third of them are women and they're going to go see Star Wars. But like, as a kid or a boy, who are you going to look to? Rey's not that cool. She doesn't do anything cool. She doesn't work for anything.
Perfect. So I guess she's got that going for her.
The best parts of the movie were when she got hit with a lightsaber in the head. I audibly laughed. And then the part where Snoke told Kylo Ren you got beat by a girl with no training, I'm like, oh my god, they're going to fix this fucking movie. It's going to be so much better. Nope. Not at all.
I'm kind of hoping JJ goes into Episode 9 and the title crawl starts and it says Episode 8. And then the one is like, haha, just kidding. Gotcha. Haha. Okay, here's what actually happened. And then there's actually like a more competent movie that actually builds on the plot lines Episode 7 set up. Episode 7, I watched it and I enjoyed it the first time because I saw it opening day and my friends and we all enjoyed it. And then we didn't really watch it again. We didn't. It was a movie we went back to see in the theaters again. And then when it was announced, oh, it's coming to digital and Blu-ray, blah blah blah, I pre-ordered it. And when it came, I watched it again, and I regretted pre-ordering it because there wasn't really a part I could say I loved. And then later on in the year, I was like, oh, let me watch this movie again, but I'll just like watch my favorite parts. And I just found myself skipping and skipping and the next thing I know, the credits started rolling, and I said to myself, huh, that sucked.
Well, you've heard my reaction, like the day of. I couldn't believe what I had seen. You know, we lived through the prequels. Yeah, they were dumb in points, but overall, you were excited for the next movie because you knew, oh, this is going to be the de-evolution or the fall of Darth Vader.
Right.
Holy crap, this is going to be cool. And then it happened, and Episode 3 ended, I thought, perfectly. I like Episode 3. I guess it's the best of the prequels. I still have a weird soft spot for Episode 1, but with 8, I just had this like negative reaction, and I've watched it twice in the theaters and for the commentary that you listen to. I'll never ever sit through it again. Like, there is no reason for me to ever watch that movie. And J.J. Abrams, we know that all he does is copy and borrow, or essentially steal, from other more competent directors. So, with Episode 9, how much can he borrow from Return of the Jedi when we've already kind of had that with Episode 8?
Yeah, it's like Rian kind of decided, oh man, JJ just borrowed, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mess him up and borrow from both movies. What you going to do now? And JJ's probably going to be scrambling like, oh shit, I don't know.
Well, because that Snoke throne room scene, if I'm not mistaken, recycled the Empire or the Return of the Jedi Emperor's throne room music.
Oh, definitely. He had the window thing and oh, what did you bring to the street? And I think the only thing that made it different is the fact that the lightsaber's in the same place that Luke's lightsaber was.
Yeah.
And the difference being, instead of Rey force pulling the lightsaber and she holds it and she fights Kylo, there's no connection there. Luke pulled the lightsaber and he tried to strike the Emperor, and Vader blocked it. And then the whole fight started, right?
Yeah.
But in this one, she just kind of like sits there, and then Kylo, they have that terrible foreshadowing of, I see him turning the lightsaber to his true enemy, and I see him igniting the blade. And it kills him. Then it makes you kind of wonder two things. Like, number one, could Luke have done that back in Return of the Jedi? And if Luke had done that in Return of the Jedi, how would things be different? Darth Vader just be like, oh crap. And then would they start fighting, or would Darth Vader be just like, oh, I guess we're cool then? Because Episode 8 just kind of opened up a whole realm of the last 7 movies could have been done differently now that all this is canon. They could have gone so many more different ways. Like the whole Lightspeed scene. Why did nobody think to do that before? On the Death Star. Just a lot of things that just call into question choices characters made in the original trilogy and even in the prequels.
Well, it makes those ones, to me, better because they don't take the easy way out. With this Episode 8, every Episode 8 decision to me is the easy way out. There's a lack of creativity in terms of the writing and the storytelling behind the scenes. Like, yeah, it was visually cool to see the, what was that Home One or whatever, go into the Star Destroyer. That was neat looking, and especially I liked how the anime influence where it did it like 3 times from the different angles. It was like the white shiny light. That looked cool. Like, I can't knock that from an artistic standpoint.
5 different screensavers right there.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, it was overall kind of like dumb. I did wonder why they didn't do it before, but at the same time, it made those other stories better because there was more drama. This is just like, well, why don't they just get these cruisers with one person on them and just kamikaze the shit out of the Empire or whatever they're called, the First Order?
I think you brought this up, but autopilot. Droids. Yeah. We've seen this be a thing before. As far as ships flying themselves and droids flying ships, we've seen that so many times, especially in the animated series. Robots flying ships and stuff like that. Why not just have the ship on a collision course and then have it trigger the hyperdrive? It shouldn't be that hard to figure out.
I think it was trying to do something new by somebody who doesn't like Star Wars.
Or doesn't understand it fully and kind of figured, oh, they gave me free reign, and didn't think that it's free reign with an asterisk of, but still keep it within the realms of what's been established.
I think them trying to give these directors, was it autonomy, was a mistake. Because at least with Lucas, with the first movie, it was it. That was all they had planned. At least with the second and the third, though, there was an idea of where it was going to go.
Right. He had a plan.
He was so much. It's the funniest thing, really, is everyone likes to bitch. Oh, the prequels were terrible. I'm so glad there's no more George Lucas. I feel like George Lucas is getting the last laugh because
he definitely is.
He kept Star Wars almost pure. Because, like I was bitching about the special edition changes earlier, at least he was able to keep Star Wars relevant without bastardizing it. There was never a point where he hoard out Star Wars to a point where it's like, it's too much. Like, Star Wars never hits a home video format right away. You know, it took a couple years for it to come out on VHS. It took many years for it to hit DVD. DVD was popular in 97, and not until 04 did it hit DVD. And then the Blu-ray took until 2011. So he was able to make the home video releases feel big, and those were, 30-year-old movies at that point. So Disney can't even keep a 2-year-old movie relevant at this point.
I was talking to my friend about that, now you mentioned that, and I don't think they care about keeping it relevant. It's just got to live long enough to make it to the next release. Because about the time that I lost interest in The Force Awakens, when I said I watched it that third time and just kind of skipped to my favorite parts, that was probably like 3 or 4 months before Rogue One came out. And so, of course, I'm like, oh man, I guess that movie wasn't that great. But Rogue One, though, seems like it might be a good movie. And Rogue One, I think, is the movie that I enjoyed the most of the Disney movies, but at the same time, it got me really upset with that false diversity push, because you had that same thing. The toys came out and everything, and it's like, oh, we've got pretty much the same character here. We've got doe-eyed, flat-faced, generic British girl with brown hair, her ethnically ambiguous pilot friend, and then the dark-skinned Empire Traitor character. It's like the same kind of character traits. No real alien characters at all, except for pretty much side characters. Like Chewbacca, I don't think was a character in Episode 7, and I don't recall them having an alien on their side. And I remember watching Celebration, and they were touting like, oh, we've got this alien that looks like a monkey, and they brought him on stage, and he looked really cool, and he's walking around making faces and stuff, and people are freaking out like, oh my gosh, it's a tangible prop. There's a man in the suit, and someone's controlling the eyes, and someone's controlling the mouth. This is amazing. And then he's in the movie for like 2 or 3 seconds.
Yeah, that's what they market on, man. That's the trick of Disney, and it doesn't hold up. And it's funny you brought up that Rogue One parallels. I never thought of it like that. The way you said it, her ethnically ambiguous pilot and the black Empire traitor. Because I was worried they were going to pull another Rey. Because Rey is a very much of a Mary Sue character. She's too perfect. She never earned anything. I just don't enjoy her whatsoever. But when Jyn Erso got chokeslammed by K2SO in the very beginning of that movie, I kind of was like, okay, they're not going to pull off the same shit they did last time.
And then she went on to beat the crap out of a bunch of stormtroopers with a stick.
Yeah, that pissed me off. And you know what else pissed me off talking about our toy discussion? They changed the stormtroopers enough to sell you a new action figure. They took off their holsters.
Oh, I'll be honest. The design, the helmet design, and pretty much the entire design of the shore troopers and the tank troopers, I was just like, oh, those are really cool. And now the tank troopers are actually my favorite trooper type, because that helmet looks really slick and they can actually sit down and not look uncomfortable. But yeah, it was definitely just for, toys, pretty much, like, oh, change this. And I unfortunately, but also slightly happily bought into it, because I do like their design, and I can't fault them for having bad design. Disney is good at designs, like you said, visually appealing. But
my thing with the Rogue One toys, that I didn't buy any, but I wouldn't be opposed to getting them, because I feel like it fleshes out the first Star Wars movie.
It does.
And that's my favorite one. So, to me, anything that expands upon my favorite Star Wars movie without ruining it, which Rogue One didn't touch. The only thing it did kind of weird was that put Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan in that movie.
Yeah, it kind of made me wonder how quick they got off that planet.
they had to get off the minutes later.
Yeah, because then next thing you know, it's exploding. And speaking of useless characters and useless toys, they advertised Saw Gerrera a lot. He was in a lot of promotional material. Dude showed up and was the wise black man character and then died.
I hated him as a character too. I hated the accent he was giving.
Did you see the figure for him?
Oh yeah, I see it every time I go to the store.
He's in that weird entertainment $24 pack of 4 figures that no one ever picks up with the tank trooper, the Two Tubes guy, and some other character I don't even remember. And I'm saying, who's going to want him? He comes with a walking stick and pretty much what are those things called? Like a rebreather almost that's like bolted to his chest. Who's going to pick that? At least Darth Vader was smart enough to have his rebreather built into his mask to look intimidating, but he's got to like pull it out of his nipple and like put it to his face and take a whiff and then weirdly put it back.
Well, when you have that Empire funding, you can get the most ergonomically advanced suit.
I guess that's true, and I don't understand the hype for him. And then there was hype for in the Force Awakens. They had hype for a bunch of the characters in Maz Kanata's Cantina, but it was like a ripoff of the original Cantina, and everything was the same yet different at the same time. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but I noticed it right away because I was looking for original trilogy aliens. Not one of them appeared in Force Awakens, which really upset me. But they had a not Ithorian in there that looks like an Ithorian, but the lips are on the front, which doesn't make sense. But the head shape is the same, and then they didn't even have the decency to make that into like a figure or anything. And then they made the red guy into a figure, which really upset me because when they introduced the red guy, do you remember him, the Crimson Corsair?
The guy with like the horns or whatever?
Yeah, he was in like a red suit, and Finn's talking to him like, "Hey, I want to get out of this movie." And the Crimson Corsair's like, "Yeah, the last ship right here." And then the plot dragged Finn back in.
I remember. I mean, it was a bad experience for me, so I try to block as much of it as I can out. But I do know who you're talking about because I watch a YouTube channel and they were talking about that character at great lengths.
Yeah, that guy, I kind of wanted the movie to just shift like, okay, that's Rey and them. We'll come back to them later. We're going to focus on these guys for like the last half of the movie, and then there'll be a footnote for Rey in character at the end of this movie. Because he looked more visually appealing than Scavenger Girl and Old Man Han.
Don't even get me started on Han Solo. My favorite Star Wars character was completely ruined. And I picked up, on a discount, I picked up the Old Man Han Solo 3 3/4 inch figure. But other than that, man, he just took everything about that character and threw it out the window in service of a bad story and a poorly written character named Rey.
Yeah.
Why do all the characters like her?
Well...
See? At least with... like, look at... When Han and Luke were on the Death Star in the beginning, and he's like, I better get paid. You gave him an incentive for him not, like, leaving. Then Han did want to leave, but he's like, you're pretty good in a fight, we could use you. Luke had proved his worth to Han. What did Rey do? She she flew a ship around and told Han how to fix the Millennium Falcon, which really made no sense. Like, why would she know these things?
The weird thing is, her fix, everyone talks about her fix of the Millennium Falcon, but her fix was the most crude fix. She just ripped this thing out of the wall. And I feel like if given time, Han would have found a more elegant way to bypass it. Like, he knows the Falcon, he's going to bypass the ship and like, do some quick coding, and I know there's like this plug here is supposed to go here, but I know this ship, it's actually plugged in over here because I repaired it incorrectly one time and now it works differently. Kind of like, I don't know if you've ever seen what's it called? Serenity, but if I remember correctly, there's this one move that the villain does that kind of paralyzes you from the waist down, but when he uses it on the main hero towards the end of the movie, that guy, it doesn't work on him because he had surgery and that nerve was moved. And so I kind of figured Han was going to do something kind of like that. And then when Rey ripped it out, I was like, okay, here it's going to mess something up because she was really, she's going to make a mistake here. She ripped something out of the wall. She doesn't know what it is. This isn't her ship. She's looking all happy, and he's going to be like, well, congratulations, you've just destroyed our hyperdrive or something like that. But nothing came of her just ripping this mechanical device out of the wall. My computer complains if I pull a USB drive out without ejecting it. How can you rip something out of a ship with no ill consequences?
bad story, man. It's exactly what it is. Because remember in the other ones, anytime something could happen on the ship, they talked about ramifications, or like when Han was fixing an empire. They don't go into like great boring detail, like Star Trek levels of detail, but they at least give you an idea of how things work and how they need to be. And it was like, after all this time, he's like, now watch this, and he goes to hit the hyperdrive, and she's like, watch what? And the humor was derived from that, not making. And Han was made to look like an asshole, but it fit within his character. This one, it's like, oh, I know what I'm doing, blah 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 blah. I'm like, who are you, girl? And then they make it a point, well, we're going to subvert your expectations and make her a nobody. So I didn't have any kind of theories going. Yeah, it made it worse because I had no theories going in. I actually don't give a shit about these characters. So I was just like, whatever, I got to see it for the channel. We get to it, and it's like, hey, nothing was paid off. So I guess to play devil's advocate, I would have been upset if I had put, all that emotion in. And as somebody who just didn't give a shit, I was still kind of like, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
I don't get her appeal.
Speaking of waste of time, a lot of people that I work with are saying, yeah, you could probably skip this movie, go straight to episode 9, and everything would be the same, because nothing changes in the grand scheme of the story. None of the characters really go through an arc. Leia's not dead, so she's still around. We lost Akbar, but it's not like he had a big part to play in episode 7. Rey is just as powerful as she was before, with no consequences. She didn't lose a limb, she didn't lose an arm, she didn't even lose a fingernail.
And she got a cut on her forehead.
Did she get a cut? Did she actually get a cut from that?
Yeah, she had like a little bitty, because I bitched about it nonstop. I'm like you said, no arm lost. Anakin lost an arm, Luke lost a hand, and she gets a scratch.
Anakin lost both arms and his legs by the end of episode 3. And then
but I just meant in episode 2 in the second movie of each trilogy.
In the middle, yeah. He lost an arm, and like you said, Luke lost his hand. Han was essentially dead. Chewbacca was in mourning, never got a hug from anybody. Like, every time something bad happens to Chewbacca, people just kind of ignore him. It's kind of sad.
He can't speak English.
Yeah.
or Galactic Basic, or whatever they call that language.
And, of course, Rey understands it, though, so, just in case.
Yeah, like, look, at least with Luke, like in the first movie, when R2 would speak, C-3PO would have to explain it to him and the audience.
Yeah.
Rey just knows how to talk to droids. Rey knows how to talk to Wookiees, this, that, and the other. There's no... For a movie that's trying to bring people back into a universe, as well as bring new people into a universe for the first time, they took out those markers that were important for them.
Yeah. Pretty sure if you talk to an Ithorian, you know how to speak Ithorese.
Yeah, she would know anything. I mean, she came to our world, the character Rey, not Daisy Ridley. She'd know how to do everything, fix everything. Oh, I'm going to run for president. Why? Because I know best. It's like, Jesus, lady, chill out. She's
kind of like a grown-up. I don't know if you ever watched Fairly Odd Parents, but they added a character towards the end of the show. I think the show is actually ending now because Butch Hartman's leaving Nickelodeon. But they added.
Video.
You did?
Mm-hmm. Today.
Oh wow, yeah. It actually came as a shock, but it made sense. He's been there for 20 years. But he added this character called Chloe, and I feel like Rey is Chloe all grown up.
Now, I used to watch the show when it was new, because I was in... When did that come on? 2002-ish?
It was in the 1990s on, cartoons, and I think in the early 2000s it got its own like full series.
So I was in like the 8th grade when that show came out, and I used to watch that and like Jimmy Neutron. That was like the end of my Nickelodeon days. But I know the character you're talking about because I've seen it on YouTube channels. They're talking about the worst characters ever.
Right.
I mean, I get from a business standpoint that you want to try to skew to both sexes. But sometimes it just doesn't work. Like, Ken is not like for boys to go buy and play with Barbie. No. It's like for the girls that like Barbie to have Ken to have a boyfriend for Barbie or a husband or whatever they want to fantasize about. Same thing with Princess Leia. Like, if you go back to the vintage line, yes, Leia's the only female character, but they never made Mon Mothma or What's-Her-Face from Hoth. Like, Star Wars was always like a boy's brand. There was like a girl in the commercial for the dolls with Princess Leia where she brushed her hair and stuff like that. But that's about it.
They actually had like a Princess Leia doll like that?
Oh, okay. So with the vintage line, by the way, I live in Cincinnati and all the toys were created here. So like you can find people that worked at Kenner and you can find I've seen prototypes and sketches and stuff like in person at old toy stores. So Cincinnati is like the Star Wars city. Hell, we had when that costume exhibit came a year and a half ago. There was a special Kenner section at the end of the exhibit where they had they had every Star Wars figure and all the dolls. But the figures came out, and they also released a 12-inch line of figures. They were just called big action figures. They didn't call them dolls. And because before Star Wars came out, all toy lines were bigger toys that had real cloth outfits and more articulation. But with Kenner, they wanted to make Star Wars ships that you could put figures in, so they made the figures small.
Makes sense.
So that's why Star Wars figures are the size they are. But to keep up with that then current trend, they had 12-inch figures. So they had Luke, Leia, Han, the droids, Chewbacca, Vader, Obi-Wan, a Stormtrooper, and then they had Boba Fett and IG-88, but those are rarer to find. IG-88, I think, is the hardest one. But Princess Leia came with real hair, and there was a guide that taught you how to brush her hair and put it back in the buns, and it gave you all these different hairstyles for Princess Leia to use. So they tried early, but they kept it within the realm of like a girl's doll.
It sounds like those Force and Destiny dolls that are out right now. Have you seen those?
Yeah, believe me, I've seen them. I've seen them rot on shelves for months. My local Toys R Us stores, you can just tell that they don't move.
I got curious and I picked one up. I picked up the Mandalorian chick, who I only picked her up because I have like a little Boba Fett, pretty much like a Boba Fett shrine. And I was like, I'll just stick her over there behind the 6-inch Jango Fett and my Boba Fett Stein. And it's the worst. I don't know who it's marketed for. Like you say, they're kind of confused. So it looks like a doll, and it's got like pants like a doll, right? It's got the boots, and then like the different armor pieces can clip on and off. You can take the helmet off, and you can, she's got real hair, or real enough. But when you try to pose her posability is limited because there's an action feature where you can squeeze her legs and she draws her weapon.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah, but it's like that's like an action feature. Normally, that's more like a guy's kind of action feature of like, squeeze the legs of this figure and watch him shoot or make a sound or something like that. I don't think I've ever really seen like sometimes they'll squeeze them and like put them on a stand and then they spin like a ballerina. Like I've seen those, but I've never seen a girl's toy that you squeeze the legs and she draws a gun.
I don't think so either. I can't even think of like a Princess Leia figure that. Because they had some weird, in 2002, the Attack of the Clones line, they had it was called the Star Wars Saga line, and you could get, like, all the original trilogy characters, and some of them were good. Like, they had a really good Luke Skywalker, but he had an action feature where he'd press his back and he'd swing his lightsaber. I don't even think... No, Princess Leia didn't get an action feature. She just was, like, a re-release of an older Princess Leia figure. That's weird.
It is weird, and I actually ended up, honestly, I threw it away. I think that's one of the first, actually that is the first Mandalorian figure tossed, because it was garbage. It was, like, she doesn't stand well, because the shoes are those weird Barbie shoes that aren't actually flat in the bottom. And then, so you can, if you do manage to get her to stand up, you can't pose her, because her legs don't really move. She's got knees, but the hip joint doesn't really work that well. There's no going out to the side, so you can't put her in some sort of action pose. She can't kneel right because the feet are terrible. Her ankle joint is hidden by the boot because the boot is this thick plastic thing, so she can stand there and kind of look menacing, but she's gonna fall over because her head's so big, and then you put the helmet on and it just looks weird and it's not. So I tossed it.
I could never bring myself to purchase something like that unless it was like, have you seen our porg video where we gutted the
that was great
stuffed porg? That it really was hard for me to buy those because I just thought, ew, like what am I doing? I know I'm doing it for YouTube as a joke and it's going to be viewed by thousands of people and stuff like that, but it was still like, I don't know, I had this cognitive dissonance. I was like, oh, do I do this? Do I?
It's like selling your soul almost.
Yeah, I went and bought a couple of them at different stores. I went to the what was that, Build-A-Bear workshop, and then I went to the one at Toys R Us, and I was just like, oh, what are you doing, Jeff? Like the day I bring home a Rey action figure, like just to put on a shelf, is the day that this channel's dead and I've become someone else.
Have you seen the Lego Build-A-Figures?
I have. There's that weird Jyn Erso with like a cloak.
Yeah, there's a Jyn Erso one with a cloak, and it looks all like her head's like a square. Like kind of, you know what she looks like? She actually kind of looks like Dengar because it's got the cloth is around her, but her head is square because it's plastic. And so she kind of has got that Dengar look where the face just looks uncomfortably in the middle of like bandages and technology.
Now Dengar would be a decent figure to put out in the Black Series.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they've done a Bosk, and people are kind of waiting. I think they're actually going to be releasing a Dengar. I feel like I've seen pictures of it, but I don't think it's actually been released yet. But it makes sense for him to look that ugly because he was ugly. That was kind
I
of.
think the original Wikipedia thing was like he was injured in a race
With
with Han Solo or something. Yeah, and that's why he wants to hunt him down.
Yeah, it's in Tales of the Bounty Hunters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite Star Wars books, and unfortunately, that whole story about Boba Fett in there is non-canon. But I feel like it's my favorite Boba Fett story. It talks about where after Princess Leia is found out to be Princess Leia and not what's the character's name? Not the Ubi's bounty hunter whose name I forget. She's put
Bausch?
through the
The Bausch or whatever it's called?
Yeah, Bausch. She's thrown into Boba Fett's cell when he's asleep, and she's dressed in like the slave girl outfit. And dude, straight up, first of all, before he opens the door, it kind of like goes into like an inner dialogue with himself, and he's talking about how he's getting older, his knee hurts and stuff like that. It treats him like a human, not like a superhero. Then the door gets rapped on. The Gamorrean throws Princess Leia in. And all he does is he just covers her with a blanket, tells her she can take the bed if she wants. Because he's got like morals. He's honorable. And I really liked that. Now people kind of see him as like this, he's like this cool anti-hero villain type of character. It's like, no, before that he was an honorable man working for the, at the time, legitimate government installation. Bounty hunting it's a career, it was a job. It's not like he was doing something illegal or being some bad guy. I mean, yeah, he worked for a crime lord, but he also worked for the government. He just did jobs to find people and bring them. And he had this honor code, a really kind of twisted and super strict honor code where he saw himself as right. But that story delved into his character. And I don't know if you've had a chance to read it or if you've read it recently, but if you ever get the chance, you should check it out.
Oh, I will, because I was just like visualizing what that would be like. I'm guilty of not reading, having read a whole bunch of Star Wars novels, or I really stick to just like the movies, and then I'll read like with the Young Han Solo trilogy. I read that. I have the Han Solo at Star's End, Courtship of Princess Leia. I've read a handful. I've read a lot more of the comics that take place between Empire and A New Hope. Like that's my favorite time period. But I'll definitely check that one out because I don't want to give up on Star Wars. I just want something entertaining related to Star Wars.
You got to go for the old stuff overall now. Speaking of your favorite characters, Han Solo, so I'm kind of curious what you feel about the merchandise and the new Falcon design for the upcoming movie.
Here's the thing. I own the big Millennium Falcon that they released a couple of years ago.
Right.
I never need another Millennium Falcon toy.
Oh, but this one's got a unified front end, and the cockpit's in a different place, and it's white and blue.
If anyone told me that, and to being honest, I'd be like, you know what? The one I got has a cockpit that seats 4 people. It lights up. It plays like 45 sounds. It opens up. It's got a landing ramp. It's like the best Star Wars toy ever made. I am curious to see what the Han Solo figure itself looks like, because I own him from every movie. In every costume in the 3 3/4 inch scale.
Right.
I'm really curious, and I can't promise I'm going to go out and buy it if it looks like shit, or if I actually even want it. It's kind of a thing. It'd be like if I was out and I'm like, $7, and it actually looks all right. Because I'm one of those guys that checks the paint on each figure before I buy it.
Makes sense, especially with Hasbro's hit and miss.
Well, that's why I moved on to SH Figure Arts for my Star Wars fix. Those expensive Japanese, they're Japanese from Bandai. Have you seen those?
Oh yeah, I've got a SH Figure Arts, the Tank Trooper up there.
Oh, okay. I only have Han Solo and Luke Skywalker from A New Hope right now. but I'm trying to like convince myself to buy R2D2 and C3PO and get the rest of the main cast.
Expensive.
Yeah, well, if you buy them early, like okay, SH Figure Arts did Power Rangers.
Oh
I
yeah,
bought those.
the Black Ranger too.
They were $36 to $40 when they came out. Have you seen what they cost now?
Oh geez, I think I looked up the Yellow Ranger because this was a couple months ago, and it was like $70 or something.
Oh, if you can get each Ranger for under $135, you're lucky. The White Ranger goes for $300.
Are you serious?
So, yeah, I bought the entire set for $36 to $40 per figure when they first came out. SH Figure Arts, if you buy them when they're new, they're affordable. They really don't go above like $50. But when you wait, they will triple in price relatively quick. So, if you ever see one you're thinking about, you got to get them super early. I learned the hard way with Chewbacca. I didn't pre-order Chewbacca, and now he's $150, and I just don't want to spend that kind of money on a little figure.
Have you seen the Lego Build-A-Figure for Chewbacca?
Thankfully not.
It's so Chewbacca is furry. Lego is plastic. So to make it look like fur, instead of doing like textured pieces, they just did paint apps. So it looks like he's got noodles all over his arms.
Ew.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. And they tried to do a brick-built bandolier, but it doesn't look all that great either. But if you ever feel like having a short, like, sensible chuckle, just Google the Build-A-Figure Chewbacca. It looks like he's in pain.
I'm actually looking it up right now because I have to see the Chewbacca doodles. But it's funny you talk about Chewbacca and Lego. I always thought Chewbacca's Lego figure was the weirdest looking one.
He had
because
no
he had a
eyes.
fully sculpted like head.
Yeah.
And like a Lego body, and I was like, I get how this is supposed to look within the realm of Lego, but it always makes me laugh because he's got this like really detailed face, and everyone else looks just like a sticker.
That's true. At the same time, they did Gamorreans, and that was about the same thing. And back then, in the early 2000s, they were just like that giant piece was one color. So Chewbacca was just that big block of brown with no paint detail or anything.
Ew.
And the Gamorreans.
Sorry if the photo popped up of Chewbacca. Ew.
Yeah, you see.
His knees. He looks like he has prosthetic legs.
Everyone agrees that the Lego Build-A-Figures only work for the for figures that have helmets. If you're trying to show a face, don't show a face. They did a new Darth Vader that actually looks really good with a removable helmet, and that face looks okay, but that's because he's supposed to not look all that great. So if your excuse for why this figure's face looks great is because he's not supposed to look great in the first place, you should probably stop doing faces. But the Stormtroopers are good, and the helmeted figures, the Boba Fett, I picked up the Boba Fett one because I'm a Boba Fett fan, and it looks really good. But the Jyn Erso, the Chewbacca, I don't know if you can find the leaked ones for Solo movie, but that doesn't look like Solo at all.
I have the Lego set images leaked on my computer, but I never put them in the videos because I don't want to get like a copyright strike.
Yeah, I understand.
They have the little watermark. But to answer the question you asked, I think that stuff is just going to be a quick pass for me. If I need a Lando Calrissian figure, I'll just go get the one from a couple years back. I actually have Lando. I have Lando in Skiff Guard.
There's a Lando figure out that's kind of warming the shelves right now.
Oh, the Black Series one?
Yeah, like a little 3 3/4 quarter inch because they remembered that they can do articulation at that size, so they actually gave him elbows and knees.
Oh, at Walmart?
Yeah.
Yeah, those are exclusive to Walmart.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't know because everywhere I go, I see them at Target too. At least the Jyn Erso ones I see at Target, but I feel like that's Walmart kind of sending one of their trucks to Target to kind of like piss Target off. Like, we can't sell these. Why are you sending them to us? So
it's funny that Star Wars toys are just like radioactive at this point.
Yeah,
because I remember growing up in the '90s and thinking like, man, I would seriously go to the store every week and be able to find a new Star Wars figure, and it was exciting. And now, I mean, I know I'm an adult, so it's a different situation. But as a kid, if I was a kid today, it would suck because it's like, oh, I saw the newest Star Wars movie and I want to get all the figures. Well, 5-year-old Jeff, that's not happening because they are the same figures from before you were into Star Wars and all this stuff. It'd be like if I went to get a Han Solo as a kid, and they had like a vintage one, and it didn't look that good compared to the other toys. And
Right.
I'm like, why does this one look so bad? Well, it's been on the store shelves for 15 years. We just got to sell it. And once we sell it, everything will be good. And that's where we are now. Why would kids invest in this brand?
It's kind of sad because when The Force Awakens came out, they were advertising Constable Zuvio, and I didn't pick him up at the time because I thought he looked kind of weird with those big bug eyes, right? But I knew, I don't know. Did you watch the Clone Wars series, the 3D one?
Yeah, most of it. I didn't see. Well, I did see when I saw up until Ahsoka walked away.
Okay, so you've seen Embo then, one of the bounty hunters that had the hat, and he would like throw it like a disc, big bug eyes, and he was
like Kung Lao. Yeah. I know I've seen it. I just can't remember it off the top of my head.
So he is the same race as Constable Zuvio, and they make their helmets to be kind of like how a Wookiee builds a Reich blade or a bowcaster, and it's like that's their weapon. His species, I don't remember what they're called, would make their helmet, and that's like their thing, right? So in the TV show, he would use his helmet as a weapon or as a shield every so often, and it was actually kind of a cool idea, and he became a fan favorite. So when they announced Constable Zuvio for the movie, I didn't go out and buy his figure. I thought it looked terribly ugly and unappealing with that trash bag over his body with armor on top. But I was kind of interested to see what they would do. Watched the movie, and I think that's when I first realized, oh no, this entire thing might be a bad idea. And by thing, I mean Star Wars coming back, because I didn't see him in the movie. And then I kind of researched him, and it turns out they actually cut his scene from the movie. Because so that scene in the movie where Finn is on the ground because he's lame, and he's seeing Rey, and she's struggling with those guards or whatever. Mm-hmm. One of those is Sarko Plank because they're trying to get the thing, but it's so far away you can't tell it's him. And what was originally supposed to happen is that was a different scene. Finn wasn't actually there, and when they shot it and when they first planned it out, and it was supposed to be Constable Zuvio stepping in, separating them out, and looking kind of cool, kind of fighting them off and helping her. Right? And then Finn came in much later. But they changed it to make Rey appear more self-sufficient and completely cut. I kind of joke that Constable Zuvio is the only character that's been cut out of Star Wars. Normally, Star Wars tries to cram in all the characters and everyone's got a backstory. He's the only one that's kind of been like, no, you get out. And it's sad. So he's kind of like the unsung hero of The Force Awakens in that if it wasn't for him, we'd have a different movie. What I guess makes him more of a villain, I guess. I don't know.
Have you seen what the action figure actually looks like underneath that little skirt?
I have it right here. It's just plain.
No, it's like a ball joint. It's not even like a full figure underneath the robes.
Yeah, it's just this plain looking. It's the same color as the feet or the pants, but it's like really smooth, and you can tell they didn't even try. And if you took that skirt off, it would just be this extra bland figure. And he's already really bland.
I've never seen a toy shelf warm or peg warm the way he does.
It's actually impressive. He's got that spear, and he guards that peg with his life.
Well, like I told you, my local Toys R Us is going out of business. Somehow they all of a sudden got a whole bunch of Rey figures from The Force Awakens. So
if by somehow you mean they found another box in the back.
That's what I'm guessing. Like, I can't believe like I said, I've never seen a toy line act like this. Mm-mm. That is, being sold at full price still. You had the Lego or the Disney Infinity figures buy 4 get 1 free, or buy 1 get 4 free, and all these other toy lines were on their way out. But as we heard in the video I put out yesterday about the Hasbro representative, Star Wars toys aren't, the sales are waning a little bit, but it'll come back when the video comes out and all this other shit. It's like, ugh. When will they see the writing on the wall? Why is it, 2018 and I'm looking at 2015 product? A grocery store couldn't have product from 2015. It would have rotted at this point.
Right.
But no other retail setting is something on the shelf for almost 3 years a good thing. But because it's Star Wars, they try to, the fans and writers in quotations try to spin it in a positive light.
But it's not positive, and part of the problem is I spoke with some of the Walmart employees at one of the Walmarts that I've gone to, And part of the problem is because these aren't selling, they can't put the new waves out. They don't order the new stuff. So people will come in and they're looking for like the new waves of like, oh man, Darth Revan or Jaina Solo or characters I'm actually looking forward to. Can't wait to get them. And they never come because you still have Constable Zuvio, you still have Rey, you still have Cassian Andor, just peg warming. And so Walmart, to Walmart, all Walmart sees is, oh, we don't need to order new Star Wars figures because we still have Star Wars figures on the shelves. They don't know what kind. They don't know that it's 5 or 7 to 12 waves behind. All they know is that they're there, and they don't need to order more because what are we going to do with more? We haven't sold these yet. And so they kind of take that place. And so at one of the Targets that I go to, eventually enough of the Star Wars toys were cleared out that they were able to go to their stock and order new ones. And then the ones that they ended up getting were for Rogue One, but it had already been a year since the movie came out. So no one's going to...
that sounds terrible.
So...
That actually just stings hearing you say that. It's like, oh, finally. Oh, yeah, Rogue One now.
Yeah.
Rogue One toys, for as much as I can enjoy that movie at times, the toys were a big letdown. Because it's like 3 different Jyn Erso figures. Cassian Andor's lame.
Yeah, he was pretty bad. And then you had Donnie Yen's character and the other...
He was hard to find.
He was hard to find. But then you had the other one that I don't remember his name.
Oh, Baze?
Baze. But I don't remember the
Elvis or
actor's
something like
name either. He was just kind of there.
I don't either.
Like, I remember Donnie Yen and Baze, but I know it's like Donnie Yen's not his real character name.
It's like Chirrut or something, Imwe, or I don't know.
It was something with more accents than English deserves. But here's another sad story about the background. Do you remember in Rogue One when the pilot is being taken before Two Tubes, who was that weird alien before Saw Gerrera? When you first see the pilot, there's like this really big looking mix between a Wampa and a Wookiee.
Yeah, I know. I saw that action figure the other day.
I really want to pick up that action figure. I really want a 6-inch version of that action figure because that is Moroff, and he's really cool. He is actually a part of a race called like the Gigan or something. I don't remember their name, but they've actually been around since the 90s, and they first debuted in the comics in the 90s. So he's actually a legacy alien that's been brought from paper to film. So first, that made him cool to me. Second of all, his design looks cool. That thing he's got on his face is a translator, if I remember correctly. And dude, he's got that big gun on his back with the big drum, right? I don't know if you're able to see that in the movie, but you definitely see it in the toy. He's got like this giant gun on it with like a barrel on his back, right? So does that look familiar to you?
It sounds like Baze's weapon, but...
He was supposed to be Baze. And that's why Rogue One pissed me off, because the original concept for Rogue One was a group of misfit people and aliens get together to steal the plans. It was a heist movie, right? And the original main characters was Moroff and another alien that was kind of like a different version of Salacious Crumb, where Moroff would be the big bruiser and the alien would be this thief character that was kind of like his sidekick Daxter to his Jax, right? And then they had the pilot, who was a chick, and they had some other people who I don't necessarily remember. But as they evolved it, they turned Moroff's character into Baze and made him a human because they hired that guy who I don't remember. And then they turned the Salacious Crumb character into Donnie Yen's character. And Moroff got pushed to the background, and the Salacious Crumb character didn't even become part of the movie. He stayed in concept art. And I thought, you've wasted a big opportunity. You're here standing on your pedestal preaching about, oh, diversity this, diversity that, but you can't even have real like Star Wars diversity. We've never had a Star Wars movie that leads alien characters, and here you were this close. You were on the verge of greatness. You were this close, and they just couldn't commit to the bit, and they just, nope, we got to have our British doe-eyed main bland character, and the same people we had in The Force Awakens. One of my coworkers said she watched the movie and it took her half the movie to realize that this wasn't the next movie after The Force Awakens, but that this was a different movie. But she said the characters were so similar that she didn't realize she was watching a different movie.
I could definitely see that. And the way you described it in the beginning of this Hangout session definitely makes me see it even stronger. I bet if I watch it again, I'm going to try to make more parallels and become more depressed. Watch it.
It's sad, and I want a Star Wars movie that leads aliens, because to me the aliens are kind of part of what makes Star Wars pretty unique among sci-fi. Like, you look at an alien from Star Wars and you know it's Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
There's no sort of like generic looking, like, even I think the closest thing we have to like a generic alien would be the Duros, because they kind of look like the gray aliens that people always talk about abducting cows and stuff like that. But that's the closest you get to a generic alien. Everything else looks really unique, and I really dug Moroff's look. And when I first heard news about Rogue One, that was the news I heard. Oh, it's going to be alien led, and it would be the perfect story, because you would have the xenophobic empire fighting against a small band of aliens, the very people and very creatures that they, despise and discriminate against, and they kind of go up against the empire, and they win. Even if they all die in the end, they win. They get the plans and send them out, but it wasn't in the cards. You had, oddly enough, that's probably like Virtue Signal, the movie, where you had a whole bunch of humans fighting a whole bunch of humans on behalf of aliens.
You want to talk about Virtue Signal in the movie? I thought that was episode 8 when you saw all the pilots in the opening of the movie. It was like black guy with dreads, different colored woman, this, that, and the other, and then you got the not Empire, and now there are women involved too. It's like, I thought they're supposed to be space Nazis.
Yeah,
I know the Nazi regime had women involved, but not like that.
Especially now with the First Order being even more fanatical. Like, Hux straight up had a Hitler speech in Episode 7, pretty much.
I hated that scene.
I hated it too, but it kind of got the point across, like, oh yeah, these are the bad guys.
My biggest question is, how are they the bad guys? The Empire lost. Return of the Jedi was a pretty definitive ending.
Well, they're the bad guys because we're not good enough to come up with something on our own, and we kind of needed an easy out. We had to do something with the property, I guess. I don't know.
Everything about these movies just scream bad decisions and PR, social justice-y reasoning. It's like, oh, we got to look good on this article, because if we get a bad write-up from Variety, Star Wars will die. When in reality, the Star Wars fans wouldn't even give a shit if something was like mildly... I don't remember watching episode 1 and thinking Jar Jar's mildly racist. I thought he was dumb.
Oh, yeah.
But I never once thought, oh, this is a racist character. Or the Nemoidians, I never once thought they were racist, like analogs to Asians. I was just like, these aren't really good characters. I want to watch the original Star Wars after this tape's over. I think they're just so worried about the wrong things. And, when your movies make less money and they just keep doubling down on these virtues, you see why they're where they are now. And Jumanji was like not the biggest movie of the year, but the biggest story of the year. This movie that came out of nowhere and made so much money and dethroned Star Wars so quickly, and now it came back, it lost its first place spot and then came back again. Star Wars didn't do that.
No. And it's funny, they're doing the whole virtue signaling thing without really realizing the reason Star Wars is so profitable now is because the very people that they're ostracizing kept it alive for 20 plus years when no one else was caring about it. I remember when I was growing up, I got my first job when I was in high school, and I was so happy because I was able to drive out and buy toys myself, and I'd go to Walmart, and I'd always go to the Star Wars section, and stuff would just be gone because collectors would roll through there and pick stuff up. And one time I ran into a collector, and he kind of looked like your average, kind of like basement dwelling neckbeard guy, and he's there buying up like one of every figure. And I'm in high school, and I'm like, hey man, why are you buying up all the figures? And he says, oh, it's for 2 reasons. Number 1, I love Star Wars. Number 2, these become valuable after some time because you don't know how long they're going to last here. You notice how every so often you'll come in here and it's empty? And I'm like, yeah. It's because collectors just roll through and buy them up. You never know how much these are going to be worth in the future. And this is my favorite character here. And he started talking about Star Wars, and I'm like, this is a stranger. Should I be talking to this guy? But he was really amped. It looked like he needed somebody to talk to. But those are the kinds of guys that kind of kept Star Wars alive, because he left with probably about $150 worth of merchandise. He had like a shopping cart half full of just $10 action figures and $15 action figures. And the first figure that I bought with my own money was the 2007 Saga Legends Boba Fett. It didn't have the removable helmet. It was the it was the Return of the Jedi one with the red gauntlets. And I remember going out there, and I was hunting because I knew he came out, and I was hunting for probably like 2 to 3 weeks, only going to like 1 or 2 Walmarts, and then I finally found it and I bought it, and he was the last one on the shelf, and pretty much probably like 4 or 5 more Star Wars figures. But the Star Wars section was the same size as it is now, but it was almost always empty when you went in there. But now I go in there and it's the same stuff all the time. And I don't think it's going to get that much better. And I kind of see the same mirroring also in like in the video games. They gave it over to EA, and EA just kind of sat on the license and have only released like 3 games, and one's a mobile game, so I don't even know if that counts. But they just kind of release what they think is just barely good enough, hope it oversaturates, know it's not going to last long, and by the time they release it, they're already planning the next thing, because they can afford to do that. And I don't really think the people at the top care about Star Wars the way the people who bought the toys in their early 2000s, late 90s, mid 2000s cared about Star Wars.
Well, it's really clear when you say it. I mean, you brought up the gaming thing. I used to buy Star Wars games all the time. I have no interest in buying modern-day Star Wars games because, one, I like first-person shooters enough, but I don't think of Star Wars and first-person shooter hand-in-hand. And if it is, I don't want to have to play online.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst.
And then
friends already.
You talk about virtue signaling again. It's like, hey, everything that Disney Star Wars has released has had a female lead, including this game now. It's like they're trying to make up for like the 40 years of, well, Star Wars was a boys' brand, now we're going to make it a girls' brand. Well,
what's wrong with boys having a brand?
Yeah, never once has any guy gone, we need to have more masculine Ken dolls. Or, well, guys have gotten into My Little Pony, I guess, ironically. I don't understand that one, so I'm not even going to try to get into it. But the toy store has always been separate, boys and girls. It's
like somebody went on the Oxygen channel and said, there's a lot of TV shows here for women. Let's get some monster trucks up in here.
Yeah.
No one does that. It's fine to have, like... There are girls that liked Star Wars back in the day. One of my friends, she was a big fan of Star Wars in high school. Had the backpack with, like, the stickers on it. And not stickers, the patches that you sew on there, and then the buttons and stuff. And she'd wear Star Wars, like, undershirts and stuff. Like, if for girls that liked Star Wars, they would already be into Star Wars now. You can't force them to be into Star Wars after the fact. If they didn't like Star Wars before, they're probably not going to like it now, even with the pandering. Especially with the pandering. I don't know if you remember this, but when The Force Awakens came out, they had that giant live stream of all the figures that are going to be coming out for Force Friday. Do you remember that?
That cringy one?
It was very cringy, and I hate to say it, but I watched the whole thing because I was unemployed at the time and had nothing better to do with my time. And I watched it, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to see this. And side note, do you remember that? Do you know Hello Greedo? The guy that wears the Stormtrooper helmet?
Everyone wants me to make a video on him, but I have no clue who he is. Not to sound snobby, but I don't have time for people that talk about Star Wars on YouTube because I'm always making the videos, and I really don't want to hear somebody go on about how great, something is when it's clearly when they're just full of shit.
I unsubscribed from him. I first subscribed to him because he did this thing called Inside the Prequels, where he would kind of like play parts of the prequels, and then he would walk in on them and start talking to the characters condescendingly, like, why are you doing this? And I was like, haha, this guy's pretty funny. So I subscribed to him. And around that time when The Force Awakens was coming out, he did this thing he tried to start a hashtag called NJJ We Trust. And he got a whole bunch of people from his fans to make this NJJ We Trust video where he's like, leave your name, leave where you're from, and then say NJJ We Trust. And he made like this giant companion video of all these people doing it. And I wanted to do it, and I ended up not doing it because I figured, no thank you. But looking back, it was really cringy. but it was between that channel and Star Wars when this live stream was going on, and I was watching the live stream. And part of what they advertised on this live stream for new merchandise for the movie were Star Wars handbags and Star Wars themed makeup. And I kind of sat there like, wait, what? Star Wars themed what? Makeup? What? How does that even? The people who were into Star Wars that let it get this far they're not really the makeup type. And if you do that for like women's stuff, what girl's gonna go out and buy Star Wars makeup? Like, of course you'll have your fringe person go out and buy it, but people normally by this age, they already have their brands established. Like my girlfriend already has a brand established. Like this is the brand that I buy because it's worked for me for so long. I'm not going to go out and buy this new brand, especially for Star Wars, because it's going to be marked up even more expensive because of licensing. And they tried to tout it as this kind of like premium facial thing and make your eyes look like the stars of blah, blah, blah. You could probably find the ads for it on YouTube. I think it crashed and burned. I don't think it's around anymore. And I wonder why. Probably because there was no actual market. It was like they're trying to do if you build it, they will come, but forgot that for them to come, they'd have to see it in the first place. And people that buy makeup and people that go watch Star Wars aren't necessarily, there's not much overlap there.
No, and if you notice, when they try to market it to girls, they're like, oh, we're going to be progressive, yet they go back to the same old tropes of dolls.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about this I call them the Force for Diversity dolls. It's the weirdest mishmash broken marketing in history when originally Star Wars was probably the tightest marketing in film history. It really revolutionized and created modern day merchandising in films and stuff like that. And it stood the test of time. And it's like, like let's say some billionaire created a huge company and then his kids pissed it away and they ruin it. That's what Disney's doing with Star Wars. George Lucas created this brand with the help of other people. I can't say it's all been him.
Right.
But they created this epic brand that has stood the test of time. And so Disney bought it 6 years ago this October. So within the span of 3 years, though, since The Force Awakens has come out, they've ruined it.
It's kind of like Alexander the Great. He created his empire, and then he died, and his generals were just like, oh, I want this part, and they went to war, and the entire empire fell apart. It's kind of the same thing, but less infighting between generals, more like one general that has no idea what's going on. And it's like, oh, we'll do this. Oh, that didn't work. No, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work either. Better double down because that always works, right? It's that same kind of thing.
I firmly believe that it's Kathleen Kennedy's lack of experience. Now I know people will say, "Oh, she's been involved with these great movies," but like I always say before, she's involved with these great movies, but look who else is involved with them. Steven Spielberg, Robert Zemeckis. The people that make these movies truly great aren't her. So she just hangs around long enough and gets the job because she's been there. And clearly she's not qualified to make Star Wars into something different. Yeah. She should just be knocking it out of the park on every home front, and it's not the case. It's almost an embarrassment on every front at this point.
It is. It is really sad. It's really disappointing. And
it's been my favorite franchise for years, and not anymore.
Yeah, I look at the wall of figures that I have, and I remember when I would first get them, and I'm like, man, I really enjoyed like hunting for this figure and finding this figure. And now it's more of like, I'll go and I'll check, just because it's more of a ritual than anything else. It's something to do to pass like a good 15 minutes, but I already know what I'm gonna find. It's gonna be those same figures just staring back at me like, oh, you thought you were gonna find something good here. Joke's on you.
To be honest, there's not even anything coming out from Hasbro that I'm looking for.
I can't think of any.
I picked up a Qui-Gon Jinn because it was $7 at my local Kroger.
You know they did a Qui-Gon Jinn for figure arts, though.
Oh, yeah. I don't like the prequels enough to spend like good money on merchandise because I feel like I got burned when they were new. Because I bought Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, and that was fine. But then I was like, oh, okay, Jango Fett, that's going to be the future. So I bought like the figure, the first one that had like a little grappling hook.
Right.
And I bought the I guess he was a 12-inch like electronic figure. And then he got his head chopped off, and that was the end of Jango Fett. And I'm like, okay, well then, Episode 3 rolled around, and I bought nothing.
Oh my!
I don't own a single piece of Episode 3 merchandise outside of the Blu-ray.
The only thing I'm looking forward to for the Solo movie, there are 2 new Stormtrooper types, and unfortunately, I'm a sucker for Stormtroopers, so I'll probably pick them up if they go Black Series, and now it's to the point where instead of going out soon and picking them up, I'll wait, and I'll watch like 3 or 4 people's review, and if it seems like it's actually a good figure that looks good, I'll pick it up and I'll look for it. But there's nothing anymore where it's like, oh, I've got to be out. I think the last thing I looked forward to getting was the Janus Solo figure, and that's because again, it wasn't a Disney character. It's a legacy character with a much better character arc, who's much more interesting, much better design, looking freaking cool in a black jumpsuit with the flight suit, whatever that thing on the chest is, and then the helmet and the lightsaber and the pistol with a working holster. But other than that, I can't really think of anything that I would go out of my way to go look for. I picked up one of the Death Troopers because it was on sale, the 6-inch Death Troopers, and that figure, I don't like it at all. It's pretty bad.
Are those the all black ones?
Yeah.
I picked one of those up, like, what was that, 2 years ago now? Well, last year it would have been. At my local last year at my local Kroger, because Kroger treats Star Wars merchandise like holiday merchandise.
Right.
So 90% off, you can't really beat a 90% off Black Series figure.
I don't know. I don't really feel it's worth it. I didn't like him in the movie either because everyone's talking about how impressive they were, and I'm like, what did they really do that was all that great?
What movie did they watch?
Yeah, they kind of missed Baze a bunch. They shot Donnie Yen, but he had already accomplished what he set out to do.
And he was blind.
He was blind. Like, I know the whole joke about Stormtroopers can't shoot anything. In the original trilogy, that was kind of a lie. They wiped the floor at the Rebels right at the start of the movie. But those Death Troopers, what do? They shot Galen Erso's wife after she had shot him, and then they missed finding a kid who was hiding in a box in a cave, and then they don't show up until that last scene, and they kill some nameless rebels off screen, and then they shoot at Donnie Yen and miss until he does what he needs to do, and then they get him, only because Donnie Yen stopped walking. And then they shot at Baze and completely missed, and the only reason they killed Baze is because the last one to die, the grenade rolled out of his hand. So they weren't at all that impressive when compared to even the normal Stormtroopers from the original movie, who had goals, and it's like, oh, don't kill them, just make them scared so they can get off the Death Star and we can find their base. Like the Stormtroopers are so much more effective than those guys.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't pay attention to movies enough to where like a lot of like fan theories and internet complaints, I get pissed off at those because it's really basic, people. If you just watch the films, those questions are answered very plainly.
Yeah.
Like people going about the James Bond code name. It's not, and if you watch all the movies, it's very obvious that it's the same guy through all of them. Yeah. So people just have no attention spans nowadays, and that's the problem, you know? That's the biggest problem.
The movie spelled it out for you in episode 4. They're going out, and Han's like, oh, we got lucky. And Princess Leia, are you serious? They definitely let us go. There's a tracker on the ship. And then
not this ship, sister.
And then there obviously was, so I guess maybe that's why Ray knows more, because he didn't know that.
It's so sad how Star Wars, which was a movie that's, science fiction, space fantasy, that one felt so real, the way the characters interacted and spoke, and now they feel fake. Normally it's like, well, if you watch an old superhero movie, yeah, it's a little hokey here and there, and then they make a more modern day retelling, and it's a lot cooler. No, Star Wars is like, it was a lot cooler and had edge to it, it was gritty, and now it's like weird and sanitized, and I don't know how anyone could get behind it fully.
It's because it's trendy and it's popular. That's the real thing. The toys sit on shelves because the people that buy toys aren't into it anymore because it's trendy. They know that not as much effort is being put in, just enough to make it current year relevant, but it's no longer the same Star Wars that they kind of fell in love with and built up with all the stories and all the characters. When it all got wiped out, a good number of fans were just like, we'll see how it goes, but we're a little, wary of what's going on. And then as more and more things came out, more and more fans just deserted, and I think this last movie kind of burned a lot of them. And
yet, where are they going next is what I want to know. How do you think people are going to handle Episode 9?
I mean, what can you do with Episode 9? You wasted Luke and killed him. You wasted Han and killed him. I know Harrison Ford wanted to die, but there are better ways he could have gone out. And then you didn't waste Carrie Fisher. You pulled the rug out from under us when she had a good death, and we're just like, oh, just kidding. Princess Leia's Kryptonian. And now you've got like the flip of that in real life. So Luke and Han are dead, but Mark and Harrison are alive.
Yeah.
And you can't make toys around dead Leia.
Yeah, it was a weird decision. It's one of those, like, they're trying to be considerate of Carrie Fisher's family, but it's like, hey, she really did die, and they know what kind of lifestyle she lived. Let's not walk on eggshells around the situation. Carrie Fisher's dead. Let's just get her out of the movie.
Yeah.
And let's move on. You can't... What are you going to do? Kill her off screen?
Just have another explosion and kill her off like Admiral Akbar, I guess.
Yeah, well, you brought up how Han Solo died poorly. I know you listened to the show, but he should have went out in the Falcon with Chewbacca, because the Falcon serves no purpose without him.
Yeah.
It would have been a cool thing for it's like him and Chewbacca reunite with the ship. They go on one last adventure, and then they go out with the ship.
Maybe they do the light speed trick. I don't know.
Now that would have been okay. Like I didn't want Han Solo to die. If anything, if he had to die, at least have him be with the not Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
Or at least tell, like, because the thing is, they're like, oh, our son, this and that. They ruined that. They should have revealed that it was their son at the end of the movie, not in the middle like they did. Because that was like,
I think
everyone
already kind of knew, because, like you said, nothing original. And it was his son that went to the dark side in the EU. So it wasn't anything all that special. I saw that, I was like, oh, that's going to be his son. There's no hiding that. And Rey's going to be his daughter. Of course, I was wrong about Rey being his daughter, because everyone was wrong, because whatever. But I think the thing that upset me the most about Han's death was he never, I think you guys touched on this, he never met Luke again. He never met, he met like Princess Leia, but it was so not Star Wars-y the way that they talked to each other.
Yeah, go find our boy.
Okay, honey, I'll see you later. And by later, I mean never, because I'm a deadbeat dad, and you're not. I don't know.
Everything is so poorly constructed. I don't know who wrote it, who approved it. You know for sure that if George Lucas was involved, he wouldn't have approved any of this. If George Lucas would have made Episode 7, we would have had something completely different.
Yeah.
And guaranteed to be better.
I was hoping when Rey was doing the mind trick on that stormtrooper, in Episode 7, that he would walk out and Rey thinks that she did it all. And when she goes out, there's 2 other stormtroopers there. And when they take the helmets off, it's Han and Luke. And they snuck in just like how they snuck in on the Death Star. And they just kind of mention, like, I can't believe this trick still works, or something like that. And Luke says something like, oh, well, yeah, the trick just happened to work because we're so, characteristic as stormtroopers, and not because I'm a Jedi. And it was actually him force tricking that stormtrooper to leave and unlock Rey, right? I thought that would have been a much better kind of nod to the original, while still keeping something new, kind of pull the rug out from under you about Rey's Force abilities. Like, does she have the Force? Does she not have the Force? And then Luke could also do something cool. And I feel like Hamill as well is disappointed in the movie. If you watch his earlier interviews and stuff, he just looks like a broken man, and he talks about how this isn't how he really wanted Luke to go. And he's now turned, his speech and everything. But if you watch those early interviews, there's a video online about like the 50 plus times he tried to warn us, and he looks like a broken man. And he even mentions when he was reading the script for Episode 7, when the lightsaber flies across the snow in the Starkiller base, he thought that was a page break, and when he turned the page, he was thinking he was going to grab it, but nope, it was Rey. And he said it kind of surprised him. He didn't even understand why she would be the one to grab it. He thought it would be his, but whatever.
He feels like the only person involved that wanted to be there originally.
Yeah.
And it's sad that he got, I guess he got given the rawest of all deals, because Luke should have not been a grumpy old broken man. He should have been optimistic still. He should have, maybe you could have written in Mara Jade and he had a kid, or maybe this or that, or maybe you could have, or Luke's wife died and he had more than, Kylo Ren woke up and he thought I was trying to kill him and he ran off and blah blah blah, and now that's why my whole life is in the toilet type of situation. Nothing ever felt logical with those characters. It's just all bad decisions, man. Bad decisions. Bad
decisions all around.
That's what Disney Star Wars is at this point. Bad decisions. It's not like... Here's the thing. The articles we get that are positive about Star Wars are so, like, awkwardly written in corporate speak, or their reasoning makes no sense. You can't really put any trust in these people. Now, I don't say everyone has to hate these movies. You can like it, you can dislike it, blah, 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 but you gotta just give a reason, and don't make an excuse for a corporation that you have no connection to.
Yeah.
Like, I can't stand that.
It doesn't make any sense. When Justice League came out, and it was getting bad reviews, on Rotten Tomatoes, everyone said, well, I told you that movie sucked. And then Star Wars gets bad reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and everyone's like, oh, it's bots and trolls and stuff. It's like, so now Rotten Tomatoes is no longer a valid place for people to review movies when, like, if it suits your narrative, then you believe Rotten Tomatoes. If it doesn't, then you don't believe Rotten Tomatoes. It's like, and then now, and some people don't think it's connected, but I kind of think it's connected with the whole Black Panther review embargo thing that Rotten Tomatoes
that's going to be a whole can of worms this week.
So they turned off the bad reviews, right? Like, you can't make a bad review about the movie?
Yeah, pretty much. So it's got to be in, I guess, praise.
And so I feel like Rotten Tomatoes is low-key protecting Disney, because that's another Disney property. And soon after The Last Jedi's property got raked over the coals, what is that? It's still 49 or 48% right now, lowest of all the Star Wars movies. I feel like Rotten Tomatoes is trying to protect Disney from bad reviews early on. I don't know. That's like a conspiracy theory. I don't even know if that's...
No, I don't think it is a conspiracy theory. I think entertainment isn't about the entertainment anymore. It's about the narrative. We've covered it almost every week at this point on the show, so I try not to repeat myself too terribly much, but realistically, it's just about the narrative of the entertainment. It's not about making a good movie. It's about the little blurbs and the quick digestible sound bites, or Twitter polls, or Twitter this or Twitter that. Like, it's all about the short-term things that they can do.
Right.
And I do feel that when you cut something off from criticism and you tell everyone it's great when it really isn't, that's wrong. Now, Black Panther, I've liked every Marvel movie. I've gone on record on this channel. There's some I like less, some I like more, but I've said I've liked every Marvel movie. Marvel Studios movie. I've enjoyed them all. If Black Panther's garbage, I'll be the first to admit it. I'm not on any kind of pay. I wish I was on the dole from Disney. I'd love to take a check, but I'm not. So I'm honest about everything. And even if I was an honest review, if I was a big reviewer, I'd be honest, because that's what you build this channel on. I didn't bullshit you guys with The Last Jedi. It's not like I shat on it to just shat on it. I gave reasons why. And if Black Panther's garbage, I will give every reason why. So if you can't let people be honest about a movie, there's definitely an agenda behind it. This movie is just a movie. It's not a civil rights movement. The media needs to get off of this shit. It's not the first black superhero movie. It's not the first black superhero in the MCU.
Yeah.
We had War Machine early on. War Machine was in Iron Man 2, which was 8 years ago. So that's there. We've had the Falcon, and now we're getting Black Panther. And the Falcon was an excellent character. When I saw Winter Soldier, I was like, man, the Falcon kicked ass. And my buddy Dion, who's on the show, was like, yeah, he was great. And it's not a big deal. Oh, female superhero movies. It's not really a big deal. It's like, well, there's been females part of the MCU the entire time. Black Widow's great.
She came in
I'm fine with her.
The second Iron Man? When did...
Yep.
Yeah. So she's been there since pretty much the start.
And she's been good, and she never they've kept her complex, and they've never had her emasculate a guy in a bad way. Like here's the thing: Kevin Feige gets what he's doing. He's the perfect person to make these Marvel movies, or not. He doesn't make them, but he's in charge.
Right.
Kathleen Kennedy is the bad choice. What Star Wars needs is a Kevin Feige, someone that's a fan of the series. I'm not saying somebody like me would be good at it, because I would just be like, well, the old ones were the best and we're sticking with those ones. But you need somebody who can celebrate Star Wars and make the most logical decisions and not worry about, well, it's trendy to have women in these roles. I don't care what's trendy. This is an established thing. Make more of it. This isn't about what you want. It's about what the consumer wants. And the consumer doesn't want what you're making. Star Wars was not a complete failure, Episode 8, but it made significantly less.
Yeah.
Every second installment in the trilogy makes less. In Star Wars, okay, but by the same token, other franchises aren't the case with that. You know, none of the Marvel movies in those trilogy segments, their second ones made less. Iron Man 2 made more than I think Iron Man 1. Winter Soldier made more than the first Captain America, and Civil War made $1 billion.
Best Captain America movie. I think most people agree that that's one of the best Marvel movies.
What, Civil War?
No, the Winter Soldier.
Oh, that's great. I love that movie. Dude.
It's so different. And I think that's part of the reason why it was extremely successful, because it kind of had like a somber note the whole way through. It had more realism in it than most of the other Marvel movies.
Thank you. That's what I was about to say. It was realistic, and that's something Star Wars doesn't do.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying realistic. What I'm saying is, within the realms of the MCU, you have a realistic, gritty spy thriller. You have an intergalactic space comedy. You have a magical, mystical film. You have a generic superhero movie like a Spider-Man Homecoming. You got crazy worlds and Thor. But it's all under one umbrella, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Star Wars is all the same. Like you said, Rogue One and Episode 7 are very similar, and Episode 8 is quite similar too. They're just the same thing in a new package every other year now. At least Marvel will take risks and chances and give you something new and exciting each time. Star Wars has that ability. Like, you could make a Boba Fett movie, like an old Western style flick.
Oh, I would love that.
Really gritty and really dark and really fun. Like, you don't have to make Boba Fett, like you talked about his code of honor. You could make, I'm trying to think of a character that would be a good, I don't really care much for The Walking Dead, but in the comic book, that Negan guy had a weird code.
He did.
You could make Boba Fett like that in a way. Boba Fett's not meant to be a good guy, so make that obvious, but make him the hero of that story, like put him against even worse people, and that could be something different. It could be like a very dark underworld type of film. Hell, there doesn't even need to be much of a space battle. You could start with a space battle, get onto this planet, and then you got to get out or something. You could do anything with Star Wars. You could have an actual funny movie. Like, that's what I thought Han Solo was supposed to be. And now we got Ron Howard's bland mess coming. I hate Andy Griffith's show.
Curiously enough, when I was thinking of a Boba Fett movie, when Disney first, bought Star Wars, and I was like, oh man, maybe they can make a Boba Fett movie. Especially since I was under the delusion that somehow they'd find a way to undo his backstory from Attack of the Clones. I was kind of thinking it would be really great to get like a 310 to Yuma kind of thing, where Boba Fett's got a bounty, and now he's trying to get him to somewhere, and in the midst of getting him to somewhere, he's got to escort his bounty there. But other bounty hunters are attacking him for the bounty, as well as the dude's gang is attacking him for the bounty. So it's like have you seen 310 to Yuma with Christian Bale and I don't remember the other guy's name? I think it's Russell Crowe.
I think I watched it with Dion years ago, drunk. So
it's something like that.
I'll just say no. But the way you're describing this and the way I'm thinking about like putting Star Wars in that situation, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, and I think it would be pretty cool. And I think the best way to make people happy, because there are a lot of people that like original Boba Fett, and there are a lot of people that like clone Boba Fett. And I think the best way to make both people happy is if it's hinted, but not quite confirmed, when they get to the ending that Boba Fett dies, and then his Quarry, who would be Journeyman Protector Jaster Mareel, would then take on the role of Boba Fett, and then Boba Fett goes on to be like the Dread Pirate Roberts, where it's kind of like eventually when he gets too old, it gets passed down. The title gets passed down to someone else. Whoever defeats Boba Fett becomes the next Boba Fett.
So who would get the role after Return of the Jedi when he was eaten by the Sarlacc pit?
That's a good question. A lot of people, not a lot, but a good number of people believe that between the two movies, since he's got different armor, that it's two different guys, and that it's like a Boba Fett only appears in one place, but there's like many people playing Boba Fett, or somebody killed Boba Fett, took his armor, and took the name. And you even had that in the comics. He got out of the Sarlacc pit, and then all that time, Jodo Cass had been saying, "Oh, I'm Boba Fett because I've got Mandalorian armor," and Boba Fett hunted him down, and was like, "Nope," and like shot him in the back of the head. But it wouldn't be something that was foreign to Star Wars fans. But then it wouldn't be explicit either. So whoever comes out of that last area would still sound like Boba Fett, like, because he would, with the helmet on, he has a certain sound, but with the helmet off, he sounds different. So you don't know who's actually under the helmet by the end of the movie. And regardless, he claims the bounty. So if you believe the guy killed Boba Fett and took Boba Fett's name, he's claimed the bounty on himself. If you believe Boba Fett killed the guy, then Boba Fett's claimed the bounty and he goes on to the next case. But either way, it would make both sides happy. It'd be a very interesting movie, and people would speculate for years on which Boba Fett is really under the helmet.
I wish you wouldn't have told me that now, because when I go into Han Solo and all this stuff, I'm like, man, there are people out there that have better ideas than Lucasfilm. But no, we got to stick with Lawrence Kasdan because he's got a name involved with Star Wars. It's like they don't do anything fresh. They just get, we'll get the Game of Thrones guys, we'll get these guys, we'll get those guys.
Everyone's getting somebody that like.
Why not just get a fresh pitch like you, somebody like you that's like gives an idea like that, like that's interesting. Let's develop it. Let's see where it goes. Not because they're involved with Game of Thrones, we're going to use it.
And I've heard that Boba Fett is supposed to be in this Han Solo movie as one of the antagonists, and I'm thinking to myself, why? When Boba Fett was originally on screen, part of what made him appealing was that he came in halfway in the movie, did his job, and left. That was kind of his thing. He had no personal stake in the entire story, and it hinted that, yeah, the rebellion's going on, the Empire's fighting rebels, there's a civil war, but the galaxy is huge. There are people that have no interest in what's going on. They're just going around doing their jobs. This dude came in and did a job, and he pieced out. He had no personal stake in the story. But now having Boba Fett be a clone on Kamino, and Jedi killed his parents, and now he's got a vendetta against them, and then now he's going to be in the Han Solo movie, and he's in the Clone Wars movie. It's like, you've made it too personal. You've made the universe too small. He should have just been a random guy that came out of nowhere, did a job, and left, and did more random guy stuff in another corner of the galaxy. There should be places in the galaxy where the Empire still reigns because they don't know that the Emperor fell. There should be places in the galaxy where they still honor Republic code because they don't know that the Republic fell. The galaxies are huge. It's not just 3 or 4 planets with 2 or 3 family lines. You should be able to have any kind of story you want because you literally have a galaxy before you.
Dude, you're preaching to the choir here. But I guess I try to keep my expectations low and not be as... I'm trying to think of the right word to use. I'm just trying not to get too hopeful, because...
But rebellions are built on hope.
So, didn't they cut that line out of the movie? No, they cut out the line, "I'm a rebel, I rebel." That's the one they cut out that I thought was terrible or something like that. I was so worried with Rogue One's trailer. That trailer was terrible.
You could kind of tell. There are some shots that were cool, but when you actually thought about them, they didn't work. Like when the TIE fighter comes up and she's walking towards it, I was like, that's a cool shot. Then I thought about it. How is the TIE fighter hovering there? It's not a helicopter.
I was worried that she was going to take down a TIE fighter with a blaster pistol.
I was kind of worried too. It would have been a cool shot, just like shoot through the view pane of a thing and hit the pilot, but then at the same time, it'd be kind of unrealistic. I feel like the TIE fighter view pane itself would still be resistant to a lower caliber blaster like that.
Yeah, you should never be able to... Like, if you watch any of the Star Wars movies, they always get their ships fired at, but they still are able to take off.
Oh yeah, like the Millennium Falcon, when it was taken off from Hoth, they were shooting the back of the ship, and it didn't do anything.
Yeah, they had that cannon with it too. Remember the snowtroopers brought in the cannon? Yeah,
and it didn't really work. It's too big of a vessel. The armor's too thick. There's a reason, the laser cannons on ships are like the size of people. It's a bunch more power to take down a ship, and then on top of that, it's not just like one shot. It takes a good couple shots to certain parts.
Yeah.
So
they were smart with that one, man. They were very, very smart with that one.
yeah. I feel the part where she takes out the stormtroopers with the baton, I feel that's a carryover of the original Rogue One film, because that's kind of the tone that I got with her character from the original trailer. But that trailer.
Well, they'll never release, like, there's an alternate cut of the original Star Wars that'll never see the light of day.
Oh yeah.
That's like, there's videos that talk about what's in it that's different. It's like 40% different footage and alternate angles and takes. I would love, that's like my number one movie I'd love to see, like an alternate take of, right there with the Eric Stoltz cut of Back to the Future. You know who that is?
No, unfortunately I don't.
Well, you've seen Back to the Future, right?
I have, yeah.
They cast somebody else as Marty, and they filmed most of the movie, and then they went back and refilmed it with Michael J. Fox.
Really?
So,
I did not know.
Yeah. And there's actually one shot where Eric Stoltz is still in the movie. If you watch it, where there's a scene where they punch Biff in the diner.
Yeah.
It's actually Eric Stoltz's fist punching Biff, not Michael J. Fox's. But you should look into it, because Eric Stoltz's Marty is way different. Like, everyone else is the same. And it's really bizarre to think that there's essentially a whole movie. Like, the DeLorean's the same, Doc's the same, everybody's the same. There's this whole movie where somebody else plays Marty McFly, and they fired him about 2 months in, 6 weeks, something like that, just because it wasn't working.
That's kind of sad.
And it makes you wonder why they couldn't do that with Alden Ehrenreich with his Han Solo. You hear about how they're, bringing in acting coaches and all this stuff. Why not just cut him out and get somebody else really fast? There are a million people out there that want to play Han Solo, and I'm sure there's at least 10 people that are more qualified than he is.
There's a dude on YouTube I watched who looks more like Harrison Ford than this Alden Ehrenreich guy, and he did a Han Solo fan film, and he acted like Han Solo. Really tricky and stuff like that. There's one point in the fan film, I think what he was trying to smuggle was like a lightsaber. I don't remember. This was like 2 or 3 years ago I saw this movie. And he gets it away from the villain at the end by seemingly using the Force to pull the lightsaber towards him. The villain freaks out like, I didn't know you were a Jedi. And when Han walks away, Chewbacca growls, is like, what? No, of course I can't use the Force. And he has a magnet in his sleeve that he activated and pulled the lightsaber towards him just to freak the guy out. And it seemed kind of like, that's kind of like a Han Solo kind of move. Like, I don't really know if Han Solo would know about the Force in that way, but for him to kind of problem solve and use something practical like that, because then he later on goes on about how, like, the Force isn't real or something like that, because he was pretty much like a Force atheist in the first movie. He didn't believe any of that nonsense. And so for him to kind of play on some dude's superstitions to freak him out and get away with the prize was pretty Han Solo-y. But
well, remember in the first movie, the way they frame it, like, people haven't believed in the Force in a long time.
And then
it's not like
it's only been like 20 years.
Yeah, it's a problem, because he's like, I've never seen anything that makes me convinced there's an all-powerful Force controlling everything. So the way he makes it sound in that first movie is like he's heard about it, but he doesn't believe it. Like, no one believes it. No one has tried to think about it or use it, because he would have been about, 15 when the Empire started to gain power, so when Darth Vader was created?
Yeah, you should have known about the Clone Wars at least.
Yeah. Nope.
Because
the Clone Wars line was literally just that, a line.
Yeah. The curious thing, though, after Episode 3 comes out, you kind of wonder, like, so Chewbacca never talked to you about, like, the giant wars they had with the Clone Wars? Because he definitely was there, and he lived through it, and he fought alongside Yoda, of all people.
Well, he had his memory wiped at the end of Episode 3 along with C-3PO.
But not R2-D2.
Yep, because,
continuity.
He just beeps his way. So before we go, who is your favorite Star Wars character overall?
Oh, geez, that's a hard one.
Is it just Boba Fett? I know you got a big collection of his stuff, but
I would have to say specifically pre-1999 Boba Fett. And my favorite alien would have to be the Ithorians, like I mentioned before. And if I had to choose one of the heroes over Boba Fett, I'd probably go with Han Solo. Han Solo or Chewbacca, because every time I watch the movie, I find myself enjoying their parts much more, because they feel like some friends that I actually have. So
They feel like, to me, they like have a real friendship.
Yeah.
Like when I watch the Captain America movies, I always feel like Captain America and the Falcon are real friends, not just actors playing roles. Like I feel like those are two real characters I'm watching on screen that are real buddies.
Yeah.
And Han Solo and Chewbacca are, well, I mean, Harrison Ford's a great actor, but they're able to portray that, and I like that. Now, what is your, this video was going to be created to talk strictly about the toys, and it turned into a really great discussion. So,
Sorry.
What is your favorite Star Wars collectible you've ever owned?
Oof. Oh, jeez. I feel like that's unfair. Oh, jeez. Can I name, I guess, 3?
Yeah, name a couple, man.
So Lego Slave 1, I'm just going to group them all together. It's my favorite chip in Star Wars, so every time it comes out, I got to get it. And my White Whale was the Jango Fett one, because that one's like $200. But I found it on eBay for $150 and purchased that. So that would have to be one of my favorites. And then the Black Series Boba Fett, of course. And then I'd probably go with the SH figure. Actually, I like the SH Figure Arts Tank Trooper, but I like the posability surprisingly more on the Black Series Tank Trooper, and I think that's because the SH Figure Arts Tank Trooper feels a bit more fragile because it's more of a collector's series thing with like the paint decal. It's all glossy. It looks really nice, and it moves very well. But you can feel it's like a higher quality figure, and it's not a figure I would want to drop. Where the Black Series one is like that doughy kind of plastic. You know, Black Series, it's that weird plastic.
Oh yeah, I got a bunch of them.
And the paint apps are not bad, but it's severely lacking compared to the figure arts. But I can get him into some poses because of his weight. He's heavier, so I can get him into some poses that he keeps better than the SH Figure Arts. And a lot of times, because of the kind of poses I have had him in, that are more extreme, he'll fall off the shelf, he'll hit the floor, and I'll be like, it's okay, you're made out of, you bounce, so you're fine. But if the SH Figure Arts one fell, it would probably not bounce. It would probably ruin my day.
My SH Figure Arts figures all stay in the box. Like, I've opened them and looked at them and stuff, but I put them right back in the box, and they sit in my closet until I get a better office that's less dusty. And then I'm going to get myself a glass case for my collectibles, because I have some Hot Toys. And I have a Hot Toys Marty McFly that's I never took it out of the box. I looked at it to make sure all the pieces were in there and that it looked good.
Right.
Like I opened up the window, and then I put it's still in the shipper box. I have Batman and Spider-Man, Michael Keaton Batman and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And I got to dust those, and then I want to put those back in their shipping containers too, because I don't know, the higher end stuff that I do own, I'm real particular about, to a point where it's like I don't even touch them. They just sit on a shelf. Like, why? What do I need to touch them for? You know, they're just there to look cool.
That's true. I like to pose them around. Like I said, I got the Imperial. I can't even call it an army because it's, an army is a lot of people, but it's a good number of them just on my shelf. And I've got the Imperial handbook from Star Wars. I put kind of behind them, so it's like this little Imperial shelf. And then off to the side, I've got the Execution of Rey by Gianna, and then I've got Luke and Ben Kenobi on the side, back to back with like their lightsabers up, because that's the team up I would have wanted to see in this movie, but that don't happen because life sucks, and Alec Guinness isn't around. But yeah, those were probably my top 3. If you had asked me probably 3 years ago, I would have said one of my 3 3/4 inch Boba Fett's as well, but the Tank Trooper for sure is one of my favorites now.
What's the one piece that you'd love to have, but it's just out of your price range right now?
Oh, geez, there's so many, but I would have to say for right now it'd be Darth Revan of the 6-inch. It was Rogue One messed that one up, because I don't remember which wave. It was either the wave before or the wave after Rogue One, but he won the fan choice for make your own character to 6-inch, and Darth Revan won. And I never got the 3 3/4 inch one, and that one goes for like $350 now. And I never found that one, and that one came out years ago, and I had never thought there'd be another chance to get Darth Revan. And then this was announced, and I was like, oh yes, right when I start collecting the 6-inch, this will be great. And Rogue One came out, and shelves were flooded with figures that no one would ever buy. Like, I looked at Cassian, and I said, who wants you? No one. I picked up a Jin because I thought she looked kind of cool with this headscarf and stuff, and now she sits in a box with Finn and all my other Force Awakens figures. And her pistol was cool, but she was kind of boring. And then after that, there was never a chance to get Darth Revan, and because the shelves got flooded with Rogue One figures, that wave didn't really reach my area. I go to so many stores and never saw any from his wave except for the AT-ACT pilot, or I think it's the AT-ACT pilot. So I picked up the AT-ACT pilot. It's a tongue twister, and I picked up a snowtrooper. I think that also came out in that wave, but I never saw him. And I saw people doing toy hunting videos up to the end of last year and finding him at like J.C. Penney's and these random little hole-in-the-wall stores that somehow got their hands on the figure. And this is probably like a good year after the figures come out, and people are just now finding him. So I still have hope, but he's going for like $75 to $100 right now online, and that's only because he's still partially in stores. Other than that, there's no other figure I can really think about. I kind of wanted Sabine because I'm a Mandalorian fan by way of Boba Fett, but that figure, she isn't a Mandalorian, and I don't know if you've kept up with Rebels, but she kind of ruined the whole Mandalorian. Everything Karen Travis set up, I think that's her name, with the Republic Commando and how she fleshed out the Mandalorians was kind of trashed in favor of Sabine taking over, and now their line isn't dependent on a Mandalorian helmet that's inherited down from leader to leader from the very first Mandalore. No, now it's a black lightsaber that gets handed down. It's like, why? But she was probably my number 2. If I ever did see her in the stores, I would probably hesitate and pick her up and like walk around the store and think about it, and then probably put her back down and leave the store without her.
I have those moments all the time.
Yeah.
When the Rogue One Stormtroopers came out, I picked up 2. I was like, all right, Stormtroopers. And then I walked around. I was like, there's just Stormtroopers. I don't need more.
Yeah, I can understand that for Stormtroopers. With her, I'd probably do that, and then I'd leave, and then the next day probably be like, man, I should have picked it up, and I'd go back and she'd be gone and never see her again. And I wouldn't really lose sleep over it. But if Revan came out, and I saw him on the shelf, I'd be like, straight to the checkout aisle. Even if I'm not done shopping, I'll check out, put him in the car, and come back and finish my shopping.
Don't want to risk somebody picking it
Heck
up.
no. Even if I put that thing in my cart, I would be super nervous. Like, hey, get away from my cart! And people would look at me.
There was. Do you remember the vintage collection that came out in 2004? The ones that were on the vintage cards. They came in the clamshell cases. They were only $10 back then, but they were like super awesome. They're the first super articulated Han Solo and Luke and all those. When I bought that, I found it at a Meijer, and I was so worried somebody was going to take it. I held it the entire time, so I've had to... Because, dude, that was the hardest Star Wars figure for me to ever find. The vintage trilogy collection Han Solo. I actually opened it up and I've looked at it, but I put it back in its box every time it's done. So on one of my many shelves of collectibles in this office, that figure sits next to a Crockett action figure from Miami Vice and like some comic books. So Star Wars stuff has always been a big part of my life. It's just weird now that I'm an adult with an income. There's no Star Wars stuff for me to buy because it's all garbage.
Yeah,
It's not about changing who I am. It's that they've changed what they make and who they are.
It's really weird. Like, if I went back in time and met probably grade school me, like 13, 11 years old me, and I said, oh, and he says, how are things? And I say, oh, it's great. I got a job. I can, get money without begging my parents. And he would probably say something along the lines of, oh, that sounds great. How many Star Wars action figures do you have? And I'll say, oh, my sweet summer child, I'm so sorry, but this isn't going to go the way you think it will go. It's just going to get worse. He says, but you've got money, right? And I'll say, yeah. And he'll say, they're Star Wars toys, right? I'll say, yeah. He says, what's the problem? And I'll say, you'll find out when you're older. And then the arbitrary rules of time travel will kick in, and that'll end. And then I'll have memory of that conversation and then become even more depressed when I realize, oh, that's what I was talking about.
I wouldn't know what I would tell. Well, I would tell my kid self, like, hey, the prequels aren't... You don't like the prequels. It gets worse, though. That's all I'd say.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing I could think of is, hey man, invest in Bitcoin and hope and pray you get enough money to beat Disney's bid for Star Wars.
That would be incredible.
But
If I could, that'd be weird. Go back in time, make all that money, be like, yeah, I'll buy Star Wars and keep it independently owned.
yeah, like, hey, you want to make a movie? Send me your pitch. This is complete and utter garbage. We're not doing that. But nope. And
I'd probably hire like Timothy Zahn
oh,
to pen me a trilogy. I'd be like, look, we want to keep what you've written for the Thrawn trilogy, so let's make this happen.
and now Thrawn's been put into Rebels. They made a Thrawn 6-inch figure, and part of me wanted to get him, but I don't think he's been released single. He just has the stands, like cases of trophies that he has. Looks really cool, but it was really expensive, so I never picked it up.
Oh, the Comic-Con one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Comic-Con. They, I like that they put out those releases and stuff, but at the same time, the collectors hoard it up, and it just makes it no fun.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone needs 8 of the same damn toy in the box.
I guess they're
for future reference,
fearing like, oh, if there's a recession or if I lose my job, I'll just sell these for a quick buck. But it kind of ruins it because other collectors want to pick them up, and kids also would want one. I'm pretty sure that little Timmy would like to get a Thrawn toy. Saw Thrawn on Rebels and said, "Oh man, that guy's blue. He looks cool. I'd like to get his toy." Oh, I can't. Why? Oh, because some grown adult like used a bot to buy up all 13 from this website, and now he's selling them for like 2.5 times more money online. Sorry, little Timmy.
Yeah, there are embarrassing aspects of being a Star Wars fan, and that's one of them.
Yeah, the scalpers.
So, Greg, is there anything else you'd like to say to the world-class bullshitters audience before we close out this chapter of our Patreon hangout?
I guess I would say that I don't know. I don't know how many of them are collectors, but I feel that it's a unique position to be a Star Wars figure collector because you kind of see the crap coming before it actually arrives. Because if you follow the merchandise for Star Wars, the merchandise always comes before the movie because Kenner made that mistake back in the 70s and they didn't have enough things. So the merchandise always comes first. And if you kind of see the preview images, you're just like, oh no, this is how this is going. That's what kind of saved me from The Last Jedi, actually. Rose Tico saw that and was like, oh, that's what we're doing, huh? And that kind of saved me from expecting anything from the movie. I expected nothing, was still let down, but at least I wasn't expecting anything. So I guess the only thing I could say is for the few out there that are collectors, it hopefully will get better. I don't think it will be getting better anytime soon, but I feel, like you said, give it maybe like 3 to 5 years and we'll start getting good stuff again. After this kind of blows over, all this social justice stuff seems to be a fad. Same thing's happening in comics. Same thing happened in video games. It all blows over after enough outcry.
Yeah, the comic SJW trend can die yesterday because I wanted to be a comic book artist, and then it got really weird, and I just thought to myself, that's not me. I can't be around these types of people. They're so... I don't know. That's a topic for another day that I'll cover on a podcast at a later date. But did you have a good time on here tonight?
I did, yeah. Did you?
Well, listeners, I had a great time. Actually, Kendo was here to keep the conversation rolling if there was ever any dead air. But you know what? This thing was way longer and way better than I thought it would be. This is longer than the last couple episodes of World Class Bullshitters. So I've had a fantastic time. We've had 2 patron hangouts so far, and they've both been excellent. So thank you for making the night really fun. And listeners out there, if you'd ever like to be on a video like this or have a World Class Bullshitters hangout page or session, just check the Patreon page. There's all kinds of great perks. This is one of them, and it's a lot of fun. Justin Beck, our good friend, and now Greg can both attest to, you definitely get a lot of fun out of these experiences and hangouts. So, Greg, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank Kendo for just sitting there and listening for all 2 hours and 30 minutes of it. Sorry, Kendo.
That's cool.
And we'll be back. This will be up Wednesday, so we'll be back on Friday with our Black Panther review. So be prepared for that.
It might
Remember,
be
folks,
good.
It might be amazing. It could be the best Marvel movie. But one thing we have to remember, it's just a movie, and it's not a civil rights movement.
Well, according to some black girl on Twitter, it's the blackest movie of our lifetime, so let's see how that works.
No. That girl on Twitter probably has never read a comic book in her entire life. and probably doesn't give a shit about the MCU, which, for whatever Black Panther may be to these people, what it needs to be is a logical step in the saga towards the Infinity Gauntlet. So I don't care about whatever movement they think it is, or whatever they have attached to this movie. It's literally exists to sell you Infinity War in May.
As if I needed more of a reason to see that movie, but okay.
Funny thing is, most of those people don't get that African and Black American are two very different things.
Very different things, but I was actually thinking of a couple points I want to make on Thursday night into Friday, Kendo, when we have our commentary. Or not I wish it was a commentary. We'd be blowing up the numbers, but it'll be our review, so expect ours to be honest. Expect Jeremy Johns and Chris Stuckman's to be, pretty full of shit.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I don't jump around in lederhosen and slinging sauerkraut everywhere because I had family come from that area. And
I did too, and you never hear me talk about it.
Yeah, and saying, "Oh my God, there's an Austrian superhero. I'm represented on film." Yeah, two different countries, very different things.
Well, that's the world we live in. Everyone's got to jump on the newest thing to be included, even though they're not fans. And this will be my final point. It always pisses me off when companies try to cater to that market, and then when they put out all this shit, that market just dries up and they move on to something else, and the people that have been there the whole time that would spend just as much money, if not more, than what you'd make catering to those people are turned off. So nobody wins.
It dries up like a woman's hoo-ha around film.